Chapter 2458. Yi Qianxian's figure appeared downstairs in an instant and grabbed the shoulder of the person in front of him. His strength was so great that the latter was forced to be pulled over by him. However, after seeing the other person's face, Yi Qianxian's eyes suddenly became cold and dim. The word Tong was in his mouth, but before it could be completely spat out, it had been swallowed back. It wasn't her. Yi Qianxian looked at the young man in front of him coldly and turned to leave, but he was stopped by the latter. "Hey, brother, why did you stop me just now?" Luo Qingtong looked at the person in front of her with shining eyes. The other person was tall and his face was covered with a white jade mask. She didn't know why, but he gave her a very familiar feeling. He must have seen her somewhere before. Luo Qingtong wouldn't doubt her intuition. This person should have seen her somewhere before. Moreover, it wasn't just an ordinary person who knew him. It was very likely that they had fought before or something else. When Luo Qingtong stared at the mask on his face, Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold. After glancing at Luo Qingtong with a complicated look, he said coldly, "Nothing." He flicked his sleeves and was about to leave. Yi Qianxian was very upset that he mistook Luo Qingtong for Luo Xiaoqi twice in a row. He didn't know if it was because he missed Luo Qingtong too much, or the way she dressed up as a man and wandered around the black field gave him too much room for imagination. Now that he thought about it, even if Luo Qingtong was Xiaoqi before, she might not dress up as a man after leaving Tianfeng Inscription City for safety reasons. Someone was watching her in the dark. For Luo Qingtong, dressing up as a woman was the best way to get rid of others. However, Yi Qianxian didn't know that Luo Qingtong really did think that way. However, who asked her to be so deceitful back then? She thought that Song Qing had summoned her because he had enemies. In order to avoid the enemies of the Immortal Slayer Palace, she changed her appearance. Currently, this large birthmark couldn't be restored. If she were to change back into a woman's clothing, that would only attract more enemies. Even if she returned to the true Spill continent in the future, she wouldn't be able to feel at ease. Thus, she had chosen to disguise herself as a young man. This way, when she regained her identity as a young girl in the future, she would be able to get rid of all these troubles. Just as Yi Qianxian was about to fling his sleeves away, Luo Qingtong suddenly raised her hand and grabbed onto his sleeve, refusing to let go. "Brother." Luo Qingtong smiled at Yi Qianxian and said, "It's said that a chance encounter is better than a chance encounter. Look at how fated we are. You didn't pull anyone but me on the street. I feel that the fate between the two of us is really predestined. Do you think we should be friends? My name is Luo Xiaoqi. What's yours?" Luo Qingtong talked nonsense all the way, but on the surface, she was paying attention to Yi Qianxian. However, the latter's face was completely covered by the mask on his face. No matter how Luo Qingtong looked, she couldn't see his face. The other party's strength must be extremely strong, and this mask was certainly not an ordinary item. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes weren't fake. If it wasn't an extremely powerful treasure or the other party's strength, ordinary things that could hide one's aura and face would be ineffective against her. But she couldn't see through the person in front of her. Chapter 2459. Luo Qingtong thought of the mysterious man who came to her room last night to investigate. The same mask, the same powerful strength. And when the other party grabbed her, he blurted out the word Qing, right? What did he want to call her? Qingtong? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. One time wasn't enough, did he want to test her twice? Luo Qingtong was very suspicious that this masked man was the mysterious man who came to investigate her identity last night. The other party still hadn't given up on suspecting her identity? He really didn't give up. Then she would accompany him to have some fun. Luo Qingtong thought so and looked at Yi Qianxian with a smile. The latter was irritated and didn't want to stay here any longer. He suddenly waved his sleeve and was about to leave. "I don't think we are fated to be together." Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. Fated to be fated? The other party really dared to say anything. Who was fated to be together with her? In his life, Luo Qingtong was the only one fated to be together with him. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian suddenly left. He didn't want to be entangled with the other party. Since it wasn't Luo Qingtong, there was no need to be entangled. What's more, the other party and Luo Qingtong resembled each other, which would only make him annoyed. Hey, brother, don't go. Luo Qingtong hurriedly grabbed the corner of his sleeve when he was about to leave. She already suspected that the other party was the mysterious man who investigated her identity last night. How could she let him leave so quickly? However, just as she spoke, she heard a tearing sound. Yi Qianren's expression was unsightly as he looked at his sleeves being torn from the elbow, revealing his smooth and muscular arm. You! He looked at the youth in front of him with cold anger. At this moment, Luo Qingtong was also looking at the half-sleeve in her arms in a daze. Oh my God, she swore that she only used a little strength. How could she tear off the other party's sleeve? Cough. Brother, the quality of your clothes is a bit poor. Luo Qingtong laughed dryly as she looked at the other party's cold and angry eyes and said. The latter snorted and didn't want to talk to her at all. What poor quality clothes? It was because when Yi Qianren was about to shake off Luo Qingtong, for some reason, she suddenly felt an extremely irritated and unreasonable emotion. Then, she fiercely pulled back the force she used to shake off Luo Qingtong, which was why her sleeves were torn. Yi Qianren attributed this to the resemblance between Luo Shaoqi and Luo Qingtong. For some reason, when he saw the other party's eyes that were as cunning as Luo Qingtong's, he did not want to attack the other party. Your sleeve. It turned out that Yi Qianxian didn't care about her at all. However, Luo Qingtong wasn't annoyed at all. Didn't want to talk to her? Luo Qingtong's lips curled up slightly. The smile on her lips was unusually evil and charming. Unfortunately, it's not up to you. Didn't he want to investigate her identity? She would let him investigate it properly. Luo Qingtong snorted and stuffed Yi Qianxian's sleeve into her arms. She was going to ask Gui Feng and the others to help investigate Yi Qianxian's identity when she went back. With the other party's appearance and characteristics, it shouldn't be difficult to find them in Mercenary City. And Mercenary City was now blocked by the Tianfeng Chu family. No one could go out. Chapter 2460. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong immediately hummed a tune and rushed towards the pharmacy. She had just come out to buy medicinal herbs. Luo Qingtong didn't know what dangers she would encounter in this high-level abandoned continent, so she had to be prepared. She didn't want to fail miserably before she got what she wanted. After Luo Qingtong left, Yi Qianxian also returned to the inn where he was staying with a cold expression. Bei Qing and Feng Yu had just finished their business and came back. Seeing their master walking in like this, they were stunned. Everyone's jaws almost dropped to the ground. Master, what's wrong with you? Feng Yu and the others were fine. Although they were shocked, they didn't ask. However, Bei Qing, who was careless and insensitive, couldn't help but point at Yi Qianxian's exposed hand and ask. What do you think? Yi Qianxian looked at him with a dangerous expression. Before Bei Qing could finish speaking, Feng Yu covered his mouth. Master, I suddenly remembered that the level of our mercenary group is too low. When we participate in the mission, we may be treated as cannon fodder. Then we may lose the opportunity to get the Tianluo grass. I'll go with Bei Qing to upgrade the mercenary group's level. Feng Yu said as he pulled Bei Qing and ran away. Bei Qing's mouth was covered by Feng Yu. He struggled for a long time as he was dragged away. Feng Yu, are you crazy? The two of us are going to upgrade the mercenary group's level? Don't you know that in order to upgrade a mercenary group's level, besides getting points from completing missions, you can also challenge stronger mercenary groups? You're challenging a mercenary group. Do you want the two of us to be beaten badly? One had to know that their strength and cultivation were still sealed. Bei Qing's eyes widened. He didn't know what Feng Yu was thinking. Feng Yu looked at him and didn't want to talk to him. This stupid husky. If he didn't say that, he would be sent by his master to deal with those mercenary groups. She really didn't know what to say, but she just had to talk about things that her master shouldn't ask. Sooner or later, he would be killed by his carelessness. However, Feng Yu thought of Yi Qianxian's expression just now. It seemed that although her master's expression was angry and cold, but it seemed that there wasn't much hostility or killing intent. What was going on? Who was it that was able to provoke master to such an extent and yet remain unscathed? Feng Yu naturally knew that Yi Qianxian wasn't injured. If Yi Qianxian had made a move, his expression wouldn't be like this. It seemed that the master was simply angry. Strange, Feng Yu pondered as she dragged Bei Qing away. Yi Qianren, on the other hand, had a cold expression as she watched them leave. After Bei Qing and Feng Yu left, the others didn't dare to stay by his side. What a joke, when the master was angry, whoever was by his side would be unlucky. Didn't they see Bei Qing's miserable appearance? If Feng Yu hadn't acted quickly, he would have been even more miserable. Now, the two of them were going to challenge those mercenary groups. Even if they only challenged some ordinary mercenary groups, it was enough to make them suffer. With this thought in mind, everyone immediately dispersed in tacit understanding. I remember that there are still some things that I haven't done. I have some too. Chapter 2461. The crowd ran away quickly, but Yi Qianxian didn't pay attention to them. He just took off his mask and looked at his bare arm with a cold expression. Since he was born, except for the time when he faced Luo Qingtong, he had never been so disheveled. That boy. Yi Qianxian sullenly thought of the way Luo Qingtong pulled his sleeve tightly at that time. If it weren't for the fact that she gave him the same feeling as Luo Qingtong, he would never let her go. Yi Qianxian crushed the white jade mask in his hand and replaced it with a new one expressionlessly. After Luo Qingtong returned to the Red Flame mercenary group after buying the medicinal materials, Yu Mingxian had learned from the members of the Red Flame mercenary group that Luo Qingtong was also going to participate in the mission of the Tianfeng Chu family. Tian Luo Grass? Thinking of the goal of the Tianfeng Chu family in Mercenary City, Yu Mingxian frowned slightly. That thing was useless to him. But Luo Qingtong's strength was so low. How could the Red Flame mercenary group let her participate in this mission? Didn't Guifeng always treat her as a little brother and love her? Yu Mingxian frowned. If Luo Qingtong participated in the mission this time, what should he do? Wait here for her? It didn't matter if it was before. But at this time, his adoptive father had some doubts about him and was urging him to go back as soon as possible. In this case, it was a waste of time for him to wait for Luo Qingtong here. He couldn't even wait for her to come back. Who knew if she could come back alive in the end? Yu Mingxian frowned and listened to the description of the members of the Red Flame mercenary group. He knew that it was the Tianfeng Chu family who appointed Luo Qingtong to do the mission. His eyes were cold and his eyelashes fluttered gently, giving him a weak and helpless look. Then you go to participate in the mission. It was impossible for him to wait here for Luo Shaoqi. However, he couldn't force Luo Shaoqi to reveal the whereabouts of the divine inscription. The Tianfeng Chu clan wanted Luo Qingtong to participate in the mission, and Mercenary City had already been sealed off by the Tianfeng Chu clan. It was easy for Yu Mingxian to take action, but how to conceal her identity and take action was a problem. As he thought about it, he quickly came up with a countermeasure. He wanted to go to that high-level abandoned continent with the Red Flame mercenary group. At that time, he would have plenty of chances to ask about the god's inscription. If they couldn't get any information out of him, it would be much easier for them to make a move. Not just that, but it was hidden so well that the people of the Central Inscription Association simply couldn't find it. As Yu Mingxian thought this, she said in a low voice, "I want to go with you." The members of the Red Flame mercenary group who were talking to him about participating in the mission didn't expect Yu Mingxian's answer at all. It can't be, right? They had told him all this in order to make him back off. After all, it was fine before. But now they were going to participate in the mission, and Luo Shaoqi was going with them, so it was definitely not suitable for him to go. The group discussed how to deal with Yu Xian. In fact, they were quite sympathetic to his experience. But completing the mission was not like going on an outing. There were many dangers in the high-level abandoned continent. It was already very difficult for them to take care of Luo Shaoqi, so it was certainly impossible for them to take Yu Xian with them. So they could only tell him the truth, give him some money, and let him leave after they left. But he actually said he wanted to go with them. Chapter 2462. Everyone dug their ears with all their might. A member of the Red Flame mercenary group looked at Yu Mingxian cautiously and said, "That, Yu Xian, this mission, you know about it, right? It's very dangerous. You'd better stay in Mercenary City. When the time comes, we'll give you a sum of money. You can live a good life in the future. That, you don't have to go on an adventure with us. It's not suitable for you to go." Yeah. The other members of the Red Flame mercenary group also persuaded, "Yu Xian, it's not that we don't want to take you. It's really not suitable for you to go. Even little Seven has no choice." That stinky old man from Tianfeng Chu's family was humiliated and couldn't bear it. That's why he insisted that little Seven must participate. "We don't know what kind of obstacles are waiting for us in the future. You'd better not go. We really can't take care of you." Yu Mingxian's current appearance was that of a helpless man who was even more useless than the average person. His skin was soft and tender, and he would be injured with just a slight touch, not to mention his fragile and sensitive personality. Although the members of the Red Flame mercenary group did not discriminate against him, they would not be stupid enough to follow him and let him complete the mission with them. They were all iron-willed straight men. Only Ouyang Yingyu liked the kind of character who was more manly than iron-willed straight men. There was no way she would fall in love with Yu Xian just because of his elegant, noble, and otherworldly image. She would not allow him to tag along just because of a casual remark. Besides, they didn't want to have such a burden. More importantly, they didn't want to be unable to protect Luo Qingtong well in the future because of such a burden. That was absolutely impossible. Therefore, everyone rejected him without even thinking about it. When Luo Qingtong saw Yu Mingxian looking at her, she laughed dryly and didn't say anything. She was actually quite happy that Yu Xian couldn't go with them. After all, she had been pestered by him for the past few days. Her small illusion pill had a time limit. It would expire about once every half a month. Luo Qingtong couldn't grasp the specific time. Therefore, Luo Qingtong was troubled by Yu Xian's appearance. But with the other party's background, if you said something a little harsh, he would think that you were looking down on him for being dirty. Luo Qingtong was speechless. In order to maintain the persona of Luo Shaoqi, she had worked very hard. If it was her previous temperament, she would have sent him away long ago. It wasn't that troublesome. With that thought, Luo Qingtong looked at Guifeng. The latter thought that Luo Qingtong was speaking up for Yu Xian, so he immediately put down the dragon-slaying spear that he was wiping and looked at Yu Mingxian coldly. "Impossible. We won't take you with us. Because we can't have a burden without help in the team." Guifeng's words were extremely rude and hurtful. He had never liked Yu Xian. He was too close to Luo Qingtong. Coupled with his original identity, Guifeng had always wondered if he had ulterior motives towards Luo Qingtong. Once such an impression was planted, Guifeng's attitude towards Yu Xian couldn't be good. Even if Yu Xian hadn't done anything out of line, Guifeng was still worried. It was best to send him away now. Yu Xian's face turned pale when he heard his words. Chapter 2463. I heard a lot about the various factions when I was with that person. Some of them are about the Flying Star region. I know all the information about the various aristocratic families there. If you take me with you, you'll have a lot of assurance when you complete the mission. At least, you'll be more prepared to deal with the aristocratic family that's fighting with the Tianfeng Chu clan. Isn't that right? Guifeng and the others were taken aback when they heard Yu Xian's words. Especially Guifeng. He frowned and asked Yu Xian in a low voice, "Are you telling the truth?" If that was the case, bringing Yu Xian with them would be a big advantage. After all, the Tianfeng Chu clan hadn't told them anything about the aristocratic family they were fighting with. In the eyes of those people, mercenaries like them were probably going to risk their lives for them. They didn't care about anything else as long as they had their lives. If Yu Xian could provide them with information, they could avoid a lot of trouble. They could even protect Shao Qi and leave safely. With that thought in mind, Guifeng looked at Luo Qingtong. Yu Xian looked over as well. His glassy eyes were fixed on Luo Qingtong. He nodded and said, "It's true. However, you also know that those days were a disgrace to me. If it wasn't for Shao Qi, I wouldn't have." He didn't finish his sentence, but everyone understood what he meant. If it wasn't for Shao Qi, he probably wouldn't have told them about it. This also explained why he hadn't mentioned it before. Everyone understood in their hearts and looked at him with a trace of sympathy. Yu Mingxian lowered his eyes. A cold light flashed in the depths of his eyes. This was the best reason he could think of to join Guifeng and the others on the mission. At the same time, it wouldn't arouse their suspicion. After all, wasn't it normal for him to know some secrets when he was by the side of that young master from a sect? As for the information about the aristocratic families in the Flying Star region, Yu Mingxian didn't lie to Guifeng and the others. He was the junior president of the Inscription Association. Although he didn't know all the information about the various star fields and families, he still had a certain understanding of them. After all, if those people wanted to ask the Central Inscription Union to forge an inscription tool or something else, if they didn't provide information about their family members, how could they succeed in forging an inscription tool? Yu Mingxian wasn't worried that her words would be exposed once they reached the abandoned continent. When he lowered his eyes, Guifeng nodded and said, "All right, then when the time comes, you will set off with us." After receiving his affirmation, Yu Xian's eyes lit up. Then he looked at Luo Qingtong and said with a smile, "Little Seven, I can be with you again." "Really?" "Ha, ha." Luo Qingtong laughed dryly, not knowing what to say. Forget it, she would be more careful when the time came. Just try not to let Yu Xian get too close. Luo Qingtong was not speechless for too long. 3 days later, the Tianfeng Chu family gathered everyone in Mercenary City and prepared to head to the high-level abandoned continent. Naturally, the people from the Heavenly Wind Shu clan were leading the way. The people in Mercenary City just had to follow. Chapter 2464. The man's face was covered by a white jade mask, which completely covered his extraordinarily handsome face. Not even a crack could be seen. Only a pair of cold eyes were hidden behind the white jade mask, making it impossible for anyone to see through him. Behind him was a group of people wearing white jade masks. They were tall and slender, like the direct descendants of a wealthy family. They were Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others. These people who followed Yi Qianxian around were all outstanding members of their respective families. Just based on their strength and aptitude, they could instantly defeat all the geniuses in Tiandu, not to mention these mercenaries. Even though they had tried their best to conceal their auras, their temperament was still outstanding among the mercenary groups. When the group of mercenaries approached them, they unconsciously distanced themselves from them so as not to be outshone by others. After all, compared to Bei Qing and the others, this group of mercenaries was like clay chickens and pottery dogs. They were not presentable. Only the heavens knew that mercenaries looked at strength. Why were these people so handsome? No, it seemed like these people didn't even show their faces. Thinking of this, the group of mercenaries' faces turned green. This time, Tianfeng Chu's people sealed off Mercenary City and issued a mission. Many people from the various powers and families in the city were tempted by the news, and in an instant, many mercenary groups popped up. Although Yi Qianxian and the others were very conspicuous in the crowd, they didn't arouse too much curiosity. After all, the reward for this mission from Tianfeng Chu's people was very generous. In addition, there were many treasures and resources in that abandoned high-level continent. Anyone who didn't go would be a fool. Anyone who had the slightest idea would change their appearance and go. What was so strange about it? Everyone was well aware of this, and Tianfeng Chu's people wouldn't go out of their way to investigate. After all, the more people there were, the more power there was. As for what these people could gain there, it was up to them. Luo Qingtong's eyes lit up when she saw Yi Qianxian. She turned her eyes slightly and pulled Guifeng and the others to where Yi Qianxian and the others were. "Hey, brother, what a coincidence. We meet again." She giggled as she patted Yi Qianren's shoulder. Of course, in the end, she realized that the man was too tall and she couldn't hit him, so she changed to hitting his waist. "Pa." Yi Qianxian grabbed her hand through his sleeve and said coldly, "I don't think it's a coincidence." He also saw Luo Qingtong when she appeared. But because he was angry about what she had done, he didn't want to talk to her at all. He pretended not to see it. Yi Qianxian felt that he had spent too much time and attention on Luo Xiaoqi. And the other party was a young man. After his verification, it was impossible for him to be Luo Qingtong. Even if the other party gave him the impression of Luo Qingtong, that sly and cunning woman, he shouldn't pay too much attention to her. Love me, love my dog? This did not exist for Yi Qianxian. In this world, there was only one Luo Qingtong. No one could replace her. Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold. After saying this, he suddenly raised his hand and shook Luo Qingtong's hand away. "Hey! Why are you like this?" Hu Zhan and the others were enraged by Yi Qianxian's words. Xiaoqi came to greet him politely. Even if he didn't want to talk to her, he didn't have to talk to her like this, right? Chapter 2465. That's enough, Xiaoqi. Since they are ignoring you, let's not stick to their cold buttocks. As she spoke, she pulled Luo Qingtong and was about to leave. But Luo Qingtong avoided her. "It's okay, Sister Yingyu. Ahem. Actually, I was wrong before." Luo Qingtong waved her hand and refused Ouyang Yingyu's attempt to pull her away. What a joke. She deliberately came here. How could she let Ouyang Yingyu and the others pull her away? That would be too easy for them. Luo Qingtong glanced at the group of Bei Qing and the others behind Yi Qianxian. She could see that they were all elite warriors, and their strength was not weak. How could she give up such a good candidate for cannon fodder? No, a companion. What was more, these people were all wearing masks. Luo Qingtong couldn't help but think of the men in black. Tut, tut, tut. Were they afraid of exposing themselves in front of her? It was hard for them. But this was also good. She could pretend that she didn't know anything. It was good to be a fool and play with others. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong suddenly smiled at Yi Qianxian and said, "Brother, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it last time. You have to believe me." Well, Luo Qingtong turned her eyes slightly and said to Yi Qianxian, "Can I help you sew your sleeve back? You must give me a good chance to atone for my mistake." As she spoke, she abruptly grabbed Yi Qianren's sleeve that she couldn't retract in time. "You!" Yi Qianxian looked at her coldly. His face was full of anger, but it was all blocked by the white jade mask, so no one could see his expression. They could only hear the anger in his words. Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others were already stunned when they heard it. It turned out that their master came back shirtless because of this Luo Xiaoqi. They had thought that in this world, other than the demonic doctor, no one else would be able to make their master suffer like this. Well, that's not right. Isn't this Luo Xiaoqi very similar to the evil doctor? Of course, this resemblance was not in terms of appearance, but in terms of feeling. If that was the case, it was no wonder that the master was so tolerant of her. With that thought in mind, everyone felt relieved. Seeing Yi Qianxian being grabbed by Luo Qingtong's sleeve, they didn't rush to help. During this period of time, Master missed the evil doctor and was in a very bad mood. Even if they were angered by someone, they were still very willing to let him temporarily forget his feelings. What's more, with Master's strength, if he didn't want to, he could just wave Luo Xiaoqi away. After all, his master couldn't do anything to Luo Xiaoqi because he couldn't let go of the evil doctor. Therefore, everyone watched from the side and did not make a move. Otherwise, with Luo Qingtong's blasphemy against Yi Qianxian, Feng Yu, Bei Qing, and the others would have already driven her and the people of the Red Flame mercenary regiment away. The mercenary regiments around them kept a respectful distance from them, not only because Yi Qianxian and the others were outstanding, but also because of the strength of Feng Yu, Bei Qing, and the others, which made them not dare to approach this group of people with white jade masks. Hu Zhan, O Yang, and the others were originally very angry and wanted to drive Luo Qingtong away. Chapter 2466. It turned out that there was a reason why the other party had such a bad attitude towards Luo Qingtong. Tear off someone else's sleeve. Hu Zhan and the others glanced at Yi Qianxian's extraordinary temperament, and then thought of his shirtless appearance after his sleeve was torn off by Luo Qingtong. Cough cough. It seemed that it was normal for the other party to be angry. Everyone looked at the sky and didn't know what to say. Cough, just let little Seven go and apologize. The group of Red Flame mercenary group members instantly stopped talking. Anyway, although the man's tone was unkind, he didn't seem to want to hurt Luo Qingtong. Everyone just pretended not to see it. Only Yu Mingxian, whose face was hidden under a veil hat, stared at Yi Qianxian. Was this man the one who came to investigate Luo Xiaoqi's identity that night? He guessed in his heart. After all, there were very few people in Mercenary City that he couldn't see through, just like Luo Qingtong. But the man that night was the same, and this man was wearing a mask, so he couldn't see through him. Not only that, Yu Mingxian's eyes swept over Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others behind Yi Qianxian, and the coldness in his eyes became even more intense. None of these people were weak. How could there be such a strong team in the 6-star Tianfeng domain? Subconsciously, Yu Mingxian raised his guard against Yi Qianxian. Especially after seeing Luo Qingtong deliberately getting close to him. He had been close to Luo Qingtong for so long, but he hadn't made her completely believe in him and get close to him. This man actually made Luo Qingtong get close to him again and again. If he hadn't seen with his own eyes that night that there was indeed no connection between the two, Yu Mingxian would have suspected that they knew each other. Could it be that he had gone the wrong way before? For someone like Luo Qingtong, taking the initiative to approach her was far better than meeting a stranger and letting her put down her guard. Yu Mingxian frowned and felt annoyed. But there was no way to start over. But he didn't know that there was a reason why Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian were so close. Yi Qianxian gave Luo Qingtong a different feeling. It came from the depths of her soul. Even if she didn't know Yi Qianxian's identity and even mistook him for an enemy, she still wanted to get close to him. If it was someone else, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have such an attitude. Not every enemy could be deliberately like Luo Qingtong. Yu Mingxian was thinking too much. On the other side, Yi Qianren tried to pull his sleeves back but failed. He wanted to use force but he was afraid of tearing his sleeves apart like last time. He looked coldly at Luo Qingtong and said, "Let go." He looked into Luo Qingtong's eyes. The youth's eyes were cunning and quick-witted, as if they were full of stars. She looked at him and said with a smile, "Don't. Brother, I'm really sincerely apologizing. Look at the material of your clothes. It's so good." Cough, of course, the quality is a little bad, but it's shameful to waste clothes. Luo Qingtong said seriously. "Do you want to give me your clothes? I'll help you sew the sleeves." Luo Qingtong said with a smile. He wanted to get rid of her, but she wouldn't let him. Didn't he suspect that she was Luo Qingtong? Chapter 2467. Moreover, these people were very powerful. If necessary, they would be able to escort them. Luo Qingtong was not the least bit lenient when using her enemies. When Luo Qingtong's voice sounded, Hu Zhan, who was next to her, suddenly said in surprise, "Little Seven, you know how to sew clothes? Last time, didn't you sew clothes?" Woo-woo. Hu Zhan's mouth was covered by Luo Qingtong. This pig teammate, he betrayed her every time. She felt so stifled. Luo Qingtong really didn't know how to sew clothes. She was a dignified eye-technique master. Who would learn that? Besides, what era was the 24th century? Did she have to learn needlework? Of course, she would go to a high-end store to order clothes. Moreover, the clothes would be cleaned and maintained by professionals. The broken clothes would be directly thrown away. Who would mend them? Luo Qingtong said this because she wanted to successfully rely on Yi Qianxian and the others. Did this fellow, Hu Zhan, know her good intentions or not? She really had to hand it to him. Sister Yingyu, quickly come and control him. Brother Hu Zhan ate the wrong medicine again. He's starting to talk nonsense. Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth and said to Ouyang Yingyu. The latter looked at Hu Zhan, whose mouth was covered by Luo Qingtong. He was mumbling and waving his hand to show that he was not wrong. She really couldn't help but smile. Cough, cough, I know. Little Seven was really cute. Didn't she poke the clothes when she was mending them last time? She actually didn't let Hu Zhan say it. This little guy's skin was so thin. Ouyang Yingyu thought and suddenly walked to Hu Zhan's side. She twisted his ear and pulled him aside. Enough, don't you see that little Seven is apologizing? Don't blindly interfere with her. Ouyang Yingyu also saw Luo Qingtong's purpose of getting close to Yi Qianxian. These people were very strong. If they could travel with them, it would indeed be very beneficial. Especially little Seven. This time, he was forced to participate in the Tianfeng Chu clan's mission. He did not know what kind of dangers he would encounter in the abandoned continent. If they could walk together with these people, it would be of great benefit to them. Furthermore, with little Seven's ability, it wouldn't be considered as taking advantage of these people. Thinking of this, Ouyang Yingyu immediately carried Hu Zhan to the side. Yi Qianxian looked coldly at the interaction between Luo Qingtong and Hu Zhan. He didn't know why, but when he saw Luo Qingtong's hand covering Hu Zhan's mouth, he felt a burst of irritation in his heart, and he almost made a move. He felt a burst of depression in his heart, and his gaze towards Luo Qingtong was full of hostility. The appearance of the other party had repeatedly provoked the nerve and bottom line of his longing for Luo Qingtong. If it was any other time, he would have killed him long ago. Just based on the fact that the other party dared to pull his sleeve again, and even tore his sleeve, it was enough for him to throw her hundreds of thousands of miles away with a wave of his hand. But because the other party's eyes were very similar to Luo Qingtong's, he couldn't do anything. Swish! He raised his hand and sucked Luo Qingtong over, opened his 5 fingers, and choked her throat. Hey! You! The people of the Red Flame Mercenary Corps never thought that Yi Qianxian would make a move on Luo Qingtong. This man had no murderous aura from the beginning. Why did he suddenly make a move on Little Seven? Could it be that he was angered by Little Seven? Thinking of this, everyone suddenly wanted to rush forward. Chapter 2468. Find the clothes and give them to her. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. He waved his sleeves and said to Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others. The latter and the others had not recovered from the fact that Yi Qianxian had just raised his hand to grab Luo Qingtong's throat. Hearing this, they were stunned. Feng Yu reacted quickly. He immediately thought of what Luo Qingtong had said before, that she would sew the clothes for their master. Master was not serious, was he? He wanted this young man to sew the clothes for him. But hadn't Master's clothes been lost long ago? Feng Yu's lips twitched, and he quickly agreed. Yes, Master. Please wait a moment. As he spoke, he raised his hand to grab Bei Qing and the others and ran wildly. What a joke. How could he enjoy such a good thing alone? The clothes must have been thrown into the garbage dump. He could not be the only one who was smelly. All of them had a share of it. The group of people bitterly went to find the clothes for Luo Qingtong. And they had to move quickly. Otherwise, they would not be able to catch up with the people from the Tianfeng Chu family later. The group of people ran quickly. Yi Qianxian looked at Luo Qingtong coldly and said word by word, "Don't you want to sew the clothes for me? Then sew it well." Yi Qianxian also heard Hu Zhan's words just now. He could guess that the other party did not know how to sew at all. In that case, she would sew it well. Let's see if the other party still had the energy to fool around in front of him. Yi Qianxian's eyes were cold. He was confused by Luo Qingtong's eyes just now. He raised his hand to grab her throat. In fact, he did not want to kill her. He just wanted to confirm the authenticity of the Adam's apple on her throat. As a result, Yi Qianren's eyes grew colder and colder. The face hidden behind the white jade mask became even colder and more callous to the extreme. Thinking of the hard feeling he had just touched, he knew that the Adam's apple could not be fake. This Luo Xiaoqi was indeed a young man. Genuine goods at a fair price, honest to both the old and the young. Yi Qianxian was frustrated. Since he couldn't do anything to her, he would just have to get her out of his sight. These clothes were enough to prevent her from getting close to him for a short period of time. As for Luo Qingtong, the hair on her body stood on end the moment Yi Qianxian raised his hand to choke her. It was not because he was scared, but because he was trying his best to restrain his instinctive reaction of wanting to fight back. She could feel that the other party did not have any killing intent towards her. And Yi Qianxian's reaction towards the end was also in line with her guess. But what kind of trick was that in the end? The other party actually agreed? He wanted her to sew his clothes. Damn! Luo Qingtong was dumbfounded. She had purposely found an excuse to rely on him, but she had never thought that he would agree. Furthermore, based on the other party's personality and the way he had always treated her, shouldn't he have always disagreed? This way, she would be even more clingy. Wait, isn't there something wrong with this script? Luo Qingtong stared at Yi Qianxian. And Yi Qianxian felt inexplicably comfortable when he saw her beautiful and cunning eyes staring at him like this. The other party's eyes often gave him an illusion that the other party was Luo Qingtong. Therefore, when this pair of eyes stared at him like this, Yi Qianxian inexplicably felt that Luo Qingtong was being teased by him. Unconsciously, the corners of his lips curled up. This smile was dazzling. Chapter 2469. But very quickly, the smile on his lips was forcefully suppressed. He looked at the young man in front of him, his gaze sweeping past his Adam's apple and his flat chest. The light in his eyes instantly turned cold. No matter how similar the other party was, he was still not Luo Qingtong. But seeing that the other party was so similar to the other girl, he would let him play a little more careful. Luo Qingtong's desperate attempt to get close to Yi Qianxian was mistaken by him as seeking protection. And he indeed did not want such a young man who looked so much like Luo Qingtong to die an unnatural death in that abandoned high-level mainland. Hence, he turned a blind eye to it. Yi Qianxian's gaze was cold. He did not pay any more attention to Luo Qingtong. Instead, he clasped his hands behind his back and closed his eyes to rest. Luo Qingtong looked at his back as he turned around and cursed in her heart. Was this considered reaping what she sowed? If she had known earlier, she would have said that she would buy him a new set of clothes to compensate him. What the hell was that about mending his clothes? Great, now she had fallen into the pit. Go to hell. While Luo Qingtong was feeling stifled, behind her, Guifeng, Hu Zhan, and the others were trying their best to hold back their laughter. They could not help but laugh. Little Seven was really too cute. She probably did not expect that the man would really let her sew his clothes, right? Let her tremble in excitement. Guifeng raised his hand into a fist and placed it by his lips. He coughed twice to cover up the light laughter that was constantly flowing out from his throat. His other hand patted Luo Qingtong's shoulder as he said, "It's okay, Little Seven, we have faith in you. Oh right, when you learn how to mend clothes, you can help us mend them too." When he said this, he really could not hold back the laughter in his throat. Pfft, after all, we don't have such a soft and cute young man like you in our group. There's hope for our logistics in the future. Don't you think so? Guifeng said as he looked at Hu Zhan and the rest. The latter and the rest were about to collapse from laughter. Yes, yes, yes. Hu Zhan's ears were still hurting from being pinched by Ouyang. Hearing this, he immediately raised his hand and shouted, "Little Seven, do your best. We'll wait for you to become an intelligent and brave logistics support." What kind of good logistics was this? Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth as she looked at Hu Zhan. Then, she suddenly raised her voice and said to Ouyang, "Sister Yu, I heard big brother Hu Zhan and brother Xiao Yu say that if you weren't a crazy woman, he could beat you with one hand." Hey hey hey. Luo Xiaoqi, you can't complain like this. Wah, Ouyang, you crazy woman, are you serious? Hey, 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 we still have to participate in the mission later. Ow. Bei Qing and Feng Yu didn't leave for long before they came back with Yi Qianxian's old clothes. They were lucky. Yi Qianxian's clothes were luxurious and extraordinary. Not only was it a robe, but it was also a defensive magic tool. Although one of the sleeves was torn, it was still a good magic robe. Therefore, when Yi Qianxian threw the clothes away, the waiter of the inn put it away and didn't throw it away. Bei Qing and Feng Yu didn't have to go through the trash can. They gave the waiter a lot of money and came back with the clothes. Give it to her. Yi Qianxian slightly raised his chin. Luo Qingtong was forced to take the clothes with a depressed face. Chapter 2470. Sew it properly. Don't worry if it gets torn. Yi Qianye's words were filled with indescribable indifference. I have a lot of things here, enough for you to make amends. Luo Qingtong was overjoyed when she heard him say that she didn't need to worry if it got torn. In that case, it didn't matter if it got torn. But who would have thought that Yi Qianxian would have such words waiting for her? Damn it. Luo Qingtong looked at Yi Qianxian gloomily. When the latter saw the gloomy expression on her face and the anger in her eyes, he inexplicably felt very comfortable in his heart. The other party's appearance as a man, whether it was the shape, the behavior, or the expression, was very similar to Luo Qingtong when she was disguised as a man. If it weren't for the birthmark on her face and the characteristics of a man that couldn't be faked, Yi Qianxian wouldn't have believed that she wasn't Luo Qingtong. But in fact, she wasn't. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian's eyes suddenly turned cold. He didn't look at Luo Xiaoqi anymore, but turned his eyes to other places in the square and carefully looked around. Now the crowd gathered in the square was very large. Almost all the people who wanted to go to the abandoned continent to complete the task of obtaining the heavenly grass were gathered here. If Luo Qingtong was in Mercenary City, maybe she would appear here. Yi Qianxian had a glimmer of hope in his heart. He carefully looked at the mercenary corps in the square, paying special attention to the young men and women. Then he remembered that Luo Qingtong was a cunning woman. She might not disguise herself as a young man or a woman, but she could also be an old woman or a strong man. He immediately glanced at the others again. But no matter how he looked, no one gave him a special feeling. He looked at everyone, but when he looked carefully, it didn't seem like it. Yi Qianxian looked for a while and felt a headache coming on. It was a pity that he couldn't reveal his identity now. Otherwise, he would have called out the woman's name and reported his identity. If she was here, how could she not show herself? Yi Qianren's thin lips were tightly pursed. Behind the mask, his indescribably handsome face dimmed. Then, he slowly closed his eyes in exhaustion. At this moment, there was a commotion in the square. It was the Tianfeng Chu family. A group of young men and women of similar ages walked toward the square under the lead of Elder Fu and the others. Judging from the respectful expressions on Elder Fu and the others' faces, it was obvious that these people were the direct descendants of the Tianfeng Chu family. They were the candidates who were going to the abandoned high-level continent to participate in the fight for the Tian Luo herb. While the mercenaries were in an uproar, the group of young men and women also looked at the crowd in the square with disdain. Is this the kind of trash that will protect us? Even the bodyguards chosen by our Tianfeng Chu clan's branch families are better than them. A young girl in blue who was walking in the middle of the group complained unhappily. Humph, Chu-ku, if you don't want to come here, you don't have to. Anyway, there are many descendants of the Tianfeng Chu clan who want to replace you. You're from a branch family. What are you complaining about? Do you really think that the third elder's family is still the direct descendants of the Tianfeng Chu clan? Beside her, a handsome young man said disdainfully. How dare Chu-ku, look down on the people of Mercenary City? Chapter 2471. Although their cultivation might not be higher than the guards of the Tianfeng Chu clan, their combat experience and combat ability were much higher than theirs. If it were the guards of the other clans protecting them, they might not be as good as these people from Mercenary City. What did Chu-ku know? Chu Xiaofeng's expression was full of disdain. On the other hand, Chu-ku was so angry that her face turned red. The third elder's line was indeed the direct line of descent of the Chu clan, but that was when Chu Tianyi did not have his own bloodline. Who would have thought that Chu Tianyi would suddenly find his own bloodline not long ago? No one could deny that the other party had inherited the unique aura of Chu Tianyi's bloodline. There was nothing they could do about it. Their third elder's faction could only abdicate their position and give it to the man Chu Tianyi had brought back as the true direct descendant. If not for the fact that the other party was a fool who knew nothing about the clan's affairs. They still needed the people of the third elder's line to maintain it. The third elder's line had long been kicked out of the core of power. Now that Chu Xiaofeng mentioned it, Chu-ku instantly exploded. No matter how bad the people of the third elder's line are, they are still better than the people of the eighth elder's line who don't even have the qualifications to touch the direct line of descent. Her voice was sharp as she said, "Who do you think the people of the eighth elder's line are? They are just dogs raised by the direct line of descent of the Tianfeng Chu clan. They will be led wherever they want to be. Do you think that you are part of the Chu clan just because you changed your surname?" As soon as she said this, the face of a young girl dressed in pink, who was not far away from her, instantly turned pale. Her body seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. You. As soon as she said this, Chu-ku's expression became a little flustered. I'm sorry, Sister Yufei. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying that Chu Xiaofeng and the others don't know what's good for them. They entered the Chu clan and still slandered me, a member of the Chu clan. Chu-ku's expression stiffened as she said this. This was because her words stepped on Chu Yufei's heart even more than before. No. She hurriedly waved her hands and said, Big Sister Yufei, I'm really not talking about you. You must believe me. Auntie Bai Xing is the great benefactor of our Tianfeng Chu family. If it weren't for her, who knows what would have happened to our Tianfeng Chu family. Don't be sad. Your surname is different from Chu Xiaofeng and the others. You are a true member of our Chu clan. Yes. Chu Yufei looked at her and nodded with a nasal voice. However, the expression on her face didn't look too good. The reason for that was because what Chu-ku had said earlier had truly pierced through her heart. Regardless of whether she had the surname Chu and considered herself to be Chu Tianyi's daughter, she was still not a member of the Chu family. This was something that no one could hide. In the past, Chu Tianyi did not have his own bloodline and treated her like his own daughter. She was treated like a princess in the Heavenly Wind Chu clan. But now, Chu Tianyi had found his own bloodline. Not only that, she heard that he had a wife. In this case, she and her mother might not be able to establish themselves in the Tianfeng Chu family anymore. The glory, wealth, status of the past would all be gone from her. And this was not the scariest thing. The scariest thing was what her mother, Bai Xing, had told her. If all those things were true, then her mother and she would no longer be able to enjoy the glory and status that the Heavenly Wind Chu clan had brought to them. Chapter 2472. Thinking of this, Chu Yufei's well-maintained and pampered fingernails dug deep into her own flesh. Her heart was filled with all sorts of dark thoughts, but she did not show them on her face. She only looked at Chu Ku, with tears in her eyes and nodded. Little sister Ku, I know you didn't mean it. You don't have to explain. I've always known that I'm not a member of the Tianfeng Chu family. I also know that my days with Luo Anmei were stolen. One day, I will have to return them. But little sister Ku, you're different. You originally had the chance to become the little princess of the Tianfeng Chu family. Unfortunately, before Chu Yufei could finish her words, an extremely strong expression of resentment appeared on Chu Ku's face. It made her somewhat beautiful face look like a dark and malicious spirit. Chu Yufei's words pierced right into her heart. Little sister Yufei, you don't have to worry. We still don't know the outcome of this trip to the Tianluo grass. Chu Ku sneered and said with a hidden meaning. How could it be so easy for that fool to secure his position as the young master of the Chu family? Who knew how many people wanted to kill him in secret during this trip to obtain the Tianluo grass? Among them were people from the third elder's line. It was also that fool's fault. Originally, the family head did not want him to participate in this mission. It was he who insisted on participating. He even made an agreement with the family head that if he obtained the Tianluo grass, the ownership would belong to him. No matter what he did with it, the family would not interfere. It looked like he wanted to give the Tianluo grass away as a gift. This was simply ridiculous. He actually wanted to give such a peerless herb away as a gift. He was indeed a fool. Chu Ku sneered. But it was fortunate that the other party was a fool. Otherwise, who would dare to touch him under the protection of the family head? In the future, once he grew up, his strength and power would not be inferior to the family head. When that time came, no one would be able to touch him. After all, the family head was an existence that could fight against a powerful person from a 3-star region as a 6-star region's region lord. It was not an ordinary kind of terrifying. It was said that the family head's background was extraordinary. He was not an ordinary person. Chu Ku's thoughts raced. Chu Yufei, on the other side, was also very satisfied with her words. It seemed like the third elder's people were preparing to make a move in this operation to obtain the Sky Luo grass. This way, once that person died, she and her mother would be able to sit back and relax. As for the third elder's men, they were nothing to be afraid of. Only a fool like Chu Ku would think that what she had just said about the little princess of the Tianfeng Chu family was true. The little princess of the Tianfeng Chu family, other than himself, how could it be anyone else? Chu Ku was thinking too much. Both of them had their own thoughts as they walked to the front of the square with the team. As for Chu Xiaofeng, he had already walked to the front when Chu Ku had called him a dog. He could not be bothered to lower himself to her level. Even if they were the dogs of the Tianfeng Chu clan, the 8th elder's bloodline had always been at the core of power. And what about the 3rd elder's people? Once they were kicked out of the core of power, they would be worse than dogs. They still had the nerve to be so arrogant here. It was also that the new young master's brain was not very bright. Otherwise, how could Chu Ku and the others be so arrogant? However, the new young master had inherited the same bloodline as the family head and was destined to be in charge of the Chu family in the future. Chapter 2473. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Chu Ku, and the others. The group of people walked to the front of the square. Luo Qingtong and the others also knew that the Tianfeng Chu family's disciples were here to choose their guards after the announcement. Because when Elder Fu issued the task, he had already said that they were going to be the guards of the Tianfeng Chu family's disciples. Their main purpose was to protect them. At the same time, they would help them get the Tianluo grass. Everyone was already mentally prepared, so they didn't reject it. Yi Qianxian, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others' eyes were cold. Although they were a little worried, they didn't say anything. After all, this was the Tianfeng Chu family's task, so the rules were naturally set by them. When they arrived at the abandoned high-level continent, wouldn't it be up to them to decide what to do? They were silent and didn't say anything. Luo Qingtong's eyes turned slightly, and she suddenly moved closer to them. She was holding Yi Qianqian's clothes in her hands and hadn't had time to put them away. When she moved closer to Yi Qianqian, the man opened his eyes and turned to look at her. Luo Qingtong smiled at him. "Brother, didn't we agree to go together? It's more convenient to be closer." As she spoke, she raised the clothes in her hands, indicating that Yi Qianxian didn't forget that she still had to sew clothes for him as an apology. Yi Qianren looked at her crafty and quick-witted eyes. In the end, she did not say anything. She only coldly turned her head away and closed her eyes to rest. Luo Qingtong made a face at him in her heart, and then quickly called the people of the Red Flame mercenary group over. The Red Flame mercenary group needed such a good candidate for cannon fodder. For some reason, when Luo Qingtong was close to Yi Qianxian, she felt particularly at ease. He must be very powerful. Before he confirmed her identity, she should take advantage of him as long as possible. With this thought, Luo Qingtong immediately moved closer to Yi Qianxian, so as not to be left behind. She didn't care. On the abandoned continent, even if she was weak, she could survive by relying on her blood eyes. But the people of the Red Flame mercenary group might not be so lucky. Therefore, Luo Qingtong was prepared to stick close to Yi Qianxian and the others. Anyway, they just happened to want to investigate her identity, right? Just right. She would give them a chance. The group of people gathered together, coupled with Yi Qianren's unique appearance and temperament, immediately attracted the attention of Chu Ku, and the others. "I want them." Almost instantly, Chu's name was Yi Qianxian's mouth. She raised her hand and pointed at Yi Qianxian and the others, then looked at Luo Qingtong with disgust and said, "I don't want this ugly monster." She said this very naturally and didn't consider that Luo Qingtong and the others might be in a team. To Chu Ku, these mercenaries in Mercenary City were all the same. Couldn't this ugly monster go somewhere else? Why did she have to hang out with the people she had her eyes on? Yi Qianxian, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were all wearing white jade masks. They all looked slender, like jade trees and orchids. They stood on the ground and had an extraordinary aura. It was very pleasing to the eyes. Luo Qingtong didn't fit in with them. Chapter 2474. The man in the white jade mask opposite her was the most charming person she had ever seen. Even if his face was covered, he gave people a feeling that was hard to ignore. The other white jade masked men did not have the same aura as him. Chu Ku's gaze was fixed on Yi Qianqian's face. She raised her head and raised her chin, saying, "I've chosen you. Take off your mask and let me have a look." There was an unconcealable expectation in her words. Chu Yufei's eyes lit up as she looked at Yi Qianxian. She could also tell at a glance that Yi Qianxian was extraordinary. In this group of vulgar mercenaries, he and the people around him were probably the only clear stream and scenery. Unfortunately, Chu Ku beat him to it. At this time, Chu Yufei was extremely disgusted with her identity. If she was the real little princess of the Tianfeng Chu family, why would she have to live so cautiously? She would have ordered Chu Ku to give the other party to her. Unlike now, she could only watch enviously as the other party chose first. "I refuse." Yi Qianqian's voice was cold. He did not care who he followed. After all, he did not intend to listen to the other party at all. When they arrived at the abandoned continent, wouldn't everything be up to him? But for some reason, when he heard the other party call Luo Xiaoqi an ugly freak, he felt very unhappy. This young man who was very similar to Luo Qingtong, even if he was bad, it was not the place of an extremely vulgar girl to criticize him. If the other party was an ugly freak, then what was she? Was an ugly freak worse than him? She even wanted him to take off his mask. Yi Qianxian looked at Chu Ku coldly. He watched her face turn from complacent to blushing, from arrogance to embarrassment. His voice was cold. "I refuse to be your guard." He refused, and the people around him naturally did the same. Chu Ku looked at Yi Qianxian with a red face. She did not expect to be humiliated twice in one day. Chu Xiaofeng, that bastard, scolded her. Now in this mercenary city, a small mercenary dared to refuse her appointment. You! She pointed a trembling finger at Yi Qianxian. She was so angry that she could barely contain her anger. Especially since she still harbored some unspeakable thoughts about Yi Qianxian, the exasperation on her face was even more apparent. Good. You refuse, right? You. Before she could finish speaking, Chu Xiaofeng's voice rang out from the other side. What happened to them? He walked out from the group, his face full of disdain. Chu Kub, stop acting like a young lady. Don't embarrass yourself outside. What? Are you going to flip out just because someone doesn't like you? As he spoke, he looked directly at Yi Qianxian and the others. After sizing them up, he looked at Gui Feng and the others. You're together? He pointed at Yi Qianxian and the others. Yes. Gui Feng and the rest did not understand what was going on with this young master, but they still nodded. Good, then follow me. He said, although they look a little useless, since you're together, I'll bring them along. Pfft. When Luo Qingtong heard this, she could not help but laugh. This young master of the Tianfeng Chu family was a little interesting. He actually brought along Yi Qianxian and the others because of the Red Flame mercenary group. He probably did not know that these white jade masked people were the most powerful, right? She did not know what he was thinking when he was despised to this extent. A pewter spearhead. Chapter 2475. When Yi Qianxian heard those words, he had a subtle expression on his face. Luo Qingtong had mocked him in the past. He subconsciously lowered his head and looked at the young man next to him. This time, he met Luo Qingtong's gaze. Cough, Luo Qingtong didn't know what to say. How annoying. Occasionally, he would rejoice in other people's misfortune, but he was caught in the act. How could she be so unlucky? She looked up at the sky and tried her best to pretend to be innocent. When Yi Qianxian saw her like this, his originally sullen mood instantly dissipated. This person's mischievous and scheming appearance was so damn similar to that woman. Yi Qianxian gritted his teeth and stared deeply at Luo Qingtong's flat chest. In the end, he didn't make a move to pry it open to see what was going on. He had checked the other party's body again and again. There was no doubt about the other party's identity. He probably missed that woman too much. That was why he kept mistaking the other party for her. As Yi Qianxian thought about it, he closed his eyes and turned his head away. He didn't look at Luo Qingtong again. After Chu Xiaofeng's words, Chu Ku's sharp voice rang out. Chu Xiaofeng, what do you mean? You just scolded me, and now you want to snatch people from me? Chu Ku's voice was extremely sharp. She was really angry. Her eyes were as big as copper bells, and her face was so angry that it almost turned purplish red. Chu Ku, are you sick? If you're sick, go take medicine. Chu Xiaofeng looked at her with a cold smile. All the mercenaries here are up to us to choose. They don't want to follow you, and you blame me? Chu Xiaofeng's voice instantly attracted the attention of many of the Tianfeng Chu family members. Seeing that Chu Xiaofeng and Chu Ku had a conflict, everyone's face suddenly revealed a strange expression. Chu Xiaofeng's family members were staunch supporters of the family head and only listened to the orders of the family head. As for Chu Ku's branch, before the return of the new young master, they had always considered themselves to be the direct descendants of the family head. Now that the young lord had returned, there was a better candidate for the clan head's direct line of descent. Naturally, the third elder's line would have to abdicate and give way to a better person. However, it seemed that Chu Ku was not willing to accept this because Chu Xiaofeng's people supported the new young master and had fought with Chu Xiaofeng several times. This time was probably no exception. The crowd did not intend to participate in the dispute between the two clans. At least on the surface, they did not intend to participate. They immediately pretended not to see anything. As for Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian, and the others, no one came to compete with Chu Xiaofeng and Chu Ku. Chu Yufei was overjoyed. She also didn't want Chu Ku to be followed by Yi Qianxian. Now that she saw Luo Qingtong and the others being intercepted by Chu Xiaofeng along with Yi Qianxian, she immediately said to Chu Ku in a soft voice, "Ku forget it. In the future, the people in the 8th Elder's line will be the direct subordinates of the new young master. They are not people we can afford to provoke. You are no longer the third miss of the Tianfeng Chu family's direct line of descent. We'd better not cause any more trouble. Otherwise, we will inevitably be punished." As soon as she said these words, she instigated again without batting an eyelid. This made Chu Ku secretly hate in her heart. She was bullied by Chu Xiaofeng because she had lost her status as a direct descendant. In fact, Chu Ku really thought so. If she still had her status as a direct descendant, would Chu Xiaofeng dare to go against her with just one order? He was just a dog of the clan head's direct line of descent. Chu Ku was furious. Chapter 2476. After Chu Xiaofeng had insulted her, he had brought Luo Qingtong and Yi Qianxian away. Chu Ku's eyes were burning with rage, but she could not do anything to Chu Xiaofeng. The 8th Elder's faction was at the core of power and had always been the master's trusted aides. Their 3rd Elder's faction could not compare at all. Furthermore, Chu Xiaofeng had always found her an eyesore. It was only because of her previous status as a direct descendant that he could not target her. Now that she had lost her status as a direct descendant, the other party did not even place her in his eyes and she could not do anything about it. She had no choice but to choose other guards. However, what made Chu Ku almost faint from anger was that no matter which mercenary group she chose, as long as they were slightly stronger, they had all rejected her. That's right, all of them. Chu Ku was about to go mad with anger. What was going on? Have these mercenaries gone mad? Not a single one of them was willing to follow her. Even if there were some who were willing to follow her, they were not that powerful or were very weak and had no other choice. Only then had they reluctantly agreed to follow her. Chu Ku looked at the forced expressions on their faces and almost tore the hem of her clothes into pieces. She had not even despised these people for being ugly and they actually dared to despise her. Chu Ku's face was filled with disbelief. If it were not for the fact that she had no guards to follow her and could easily encounter danger and mishap in the abandoned continent, she would definitely raise her hand and slap them all to death. She had never suffered such humiliation before. Bastards, what was going on? However, Chu Ku did not know that all this had happened because she had called Luo Qingtong an ugly freak. Who was Luo Qingtong? She was someone that the mercenaries had specially invited to rely on. The mercenaries had hoped that she would be able to observe the details and see through the mission item at a glance. From there, she would be able to formulate various countermeasures based on its habits and environment. This would allow them to gain something from the abandoned continent and even reduce casualties and losses. Under these circumstances, Chu Ku had called Luo Qingtong an ugly freak. Wasn't that asking for a beating? Who would dare to approach her now? What if Luo Qingtong got angry and decided not to tell them anything about the abandoned continent? To put it bluntly, the children of the Tianfeng Chu family were precious. However, Chu Ku wasn't the only one from the Tianfeng Chu family present. They could have chosen anyone else, but they had to choose someone who was against Luo Qingtong. Wouldn't he be bored out of his mind? Therefore, everyone rejected Chu Ku. Not only that, even those who had no choice and reluctantly agreed to follow Chu Ku sent people to apologize to Luo Qingtong, explaining their difficulties. Luo Qingtong didn't expect these mercenaries to be so supportive. She didn't say anything, and they helped her vent her anger. Chu Ku was so angry that her face turned green. Her face was as hateful as a ferocious ghost, and her body trembled uncontrollably. She was delighted and immediately responded to those who came to apologize with a light smile, telling them not to mind it. When she arrived at the abandoned continent, she would share with them the information that she had seen with her blood eye. Of course, they didn't need to let Chu Ku know about these things, nor did they need to remind her. Naturally, everyone agreed with him. No one felt that Luo Qingtong was vengeful. Who asked Chu Ku to scold Luo Qingtong first? The one who provoked her first was despicable. Chapter 2477. Everyone began to choose the people they wanted to follow. Soon, the mercenaries in the square were all assigned. Almost every child of the Tianfeng Chu family was assigned to 5 mercenary regiments. There was a small interlude. Most of the mercenary regiments, especially the high-ranking mercenary regiments, flocked to Chu Xiaofeng's side and asked him to choose their own people. Chu Xiaofeng was baffled by this. However, he couldn't choose all of his guards as high-ranking mercenary regiments. This was an internal rule of the Chu family to prevent people from abusing their power for personal gain and causing the situation of the guards to be unfair. Therefore, generally, one person could only choose 2 high-ranking mercenary regiments. The others were optional. Red Tu and Yi Qianxian formed Black Fiend, which happened to be 2 high-ranking mercenary regiments. Therefore, even though Chu Xiaofeng was popular with everyone, he only chose 3 mid-level mercenary regiments in the end. Those who were chosen cheered, while the rest were dejected. In the end, they followed the others dejectedly. This scene made the other children of the Tianfeng Chu family twitch their lips. They didn't know where Chu Xiaofeng's magic came from to make these mercenary regiments flock to him like a flock of ducks. However, they didn't know that it wasn't Chu Xiaofeng who made the mercenary regiments flock to him, but Luo Qingtong. All the mercenaries were hoping to be in the same group as her. This was much safer than being separated from the other party. After all, even if Luo Qingtong could explain the general situation of the abandoned continent to them, what if they encountered some special things? One had to know that after they arrived there, they would follow their respective masters and be separated from Luo Qingtong and the others. This was something that no one expected at the beginning. Previously, they thought that they would all be together and protect the children of the Tianfeng Chu family together. Just like this, those who were chosen cheered, while those who weren't chosen could only follow others. Looking at the lively scene on Chu Xiaofeng's side, Chu Ku, who was alone behind her and barely managed to gather 5 mercenary regiments, almost couldn't control her temper. Bastard. Chu Xiaofeng, this bastard. I'm so angry. She gritted her teeth fiercely. Beside her, Chu Yufei was in a very good mood. Her luck was not bad. Because she looked sweet and wasn't weak, almost all the designated mercenary groups were willing to follow her. 2 advanced mercenary groups and 3 medium mercenary groups. Compared to those crooked people behind Chu Ku, they were much better. Chu Yufei was very pleased with herself. However, seeing Chu Ku's anger, she still said in a gentle voice, "Little sister Ku, don't be angry. Let's travel together. It just so happens that my combat ability is not as good as yours. If we are together, we can take care of each other." As soon as she said that, Chu Ku's expression instantly brightened. Chu Yufei was very good with words. She clearly felt that Chu Ku's guards were too lousy, so she went with her. However, the words she said were subtly flattering Chu Ku, making her feel very comfortable. "Okay, Sister Yufei, thank you. Don't worry, when we reach the abandoned continent, I will take good care of you. As for Chu Xiaofeng, he better not be complacent. When I get there and see my big brother and the others, I'll definitely teach him a lesson." Chapter 2478. Regardless of whether he was the culprit, she had lost a lot of face this time. Someone had to bear the consequences. Just you wait, Chu Xiaofeng. When she reached the abandoned continent and met her elder brother, she would not let him off. Chu Ku's elder brother was the top disciple of the Tianfeng Chu family. This time, the top disciples of the Tianfeng Chu family who came to Mercenary City to select guards did not come. That was because each of them was the hope of the Tianfeng Chu family. In the future, they would be the pillars of the Tianfeng Chu family. Their guards were the most important and would not be selected from among the mercenaries. Instead, the family elders would personally make the arrangements. Therefore, they did not come here. Chu Yufei smiled gently when she heard Chu Ku's words and did not say anything. The expression on her face was very gentle. However, in her heart, she was very disdainful. When it came to the top disciples of the Tianfeng Chu family, although Chu Ku's elder brother was powerful, the eighth elder's people were not to be trifled with either. Naturally, there would be people above Chu Xiaofeng. Moreover, wasn't there still that fool? Chu Yufei's expression turned ugly when she thought of him. She gritted her teeth slightly. She only hoped that the fool would completely die on the abandoned continent this time. Then, she and her mother would be able to sit back and relax. At that time, she would still be the little princess of the Tianfeng Chu family who was doted on by the head of the Chu family. Her mother, Madame Xing, would still be the head of the Chu family's female confidant and his savior. No one would be able to change all of this. After the group of people finished their selection, they followed the people of the Tianfeng Chu family out of the city. Apart from the mercenaries who were participating in the mission, no one else was allowed to leave the city. Although the people outside were curious about what had happened in Tianfeng Mercenary City, the Tianfeng Chu family had sealed the city and said that they had something to investigate. Other people from the Tianfeng domain did not want to get in the way of the Tianfeng Chu family at this time. What if the Tianfeng Chu family thought that they had ulterior motives, or even that they were the culprits? As a result, the crowd of outsiders avoided Heaven's Wind Mercenary City like the plague, and no one came to inquire about Heaven's Wind Mercenary City. The group of mercenaries followed the people from the Heavenly Wind Shu clan and soon arrived at a desolate continent. The Tianfeng Chu family had already cleared out all the people here. At this moment, the Tianfeng Chu clan's people surrounded the barren continent, allowing the mercenaries and the Chu clan's disciples to enter. Inside, a huge teleportation array was suspended and engraved on the continent. As the spirit energy in the continent surged, it faintly rose and fell. Obviously, the Tianfeng Chu clan wanted to use this huge teleportation formation to send everyone to the abandoned continent in the flying star field. Luo Qingtong observed the array carefully. Although it wasn't as profound as the one in Heavenly Wind Inscription City, it was much easier to operate. However, it required a huge amount of energy. Other than the Tianfeng Chu clan, which had a deep foundation and a large number of experts who could provide assistance and energy, ordinary clans wouldn't be able to withstand the energy required to activate this array. She secretly memorized this teleportation formation in her heart. Her blood-red eyes faintly opened, imprinting this teleportation formation in her mind. Chapter 2479. This was of great benefit to Luo Qingtong's replication. If the formation was not activated, Luo Qingtong would have to spend a lot of time analyzing and studying it. Even if she copied it, she still had to carefully study its power flow and activation lines. Otherwise, even if she copied it, it would take her a lot of effort to activate it. The more complicated and advanced the formation was, the more troublesome it was. But for such a activated formation, the power flow and activation lines were all in Luo Qingtong's eyes. When she replicated it in the future, as long as she had enough energy, she could use it directly. This was a cross-star field formation, which might come in handy in the future. While Luo Qingtong was carefully watching the operation of this formation, Yi Qianxian beside her suddenly glanced at her. The young man silently observed the appearance of this formation, which was also very similar to Luo Qingtong's. The young girl also liked to wander around after arriving at a strange place. Yi Qianxian frowned slightly, wondering what kind of voodoo he was infected with. Before he stayed with Luo Qingtong, it was okay. Even if he knew that she was similar to Luo Qingtong, he didn't feel anything. But now, after staying with her, the more he looked at her, the more she looked like Luo Qingtong. He couldn't suppress his longing for the girl at all. He turned his head and closed his eyes silently. He didn't want to look at Luo Qingtong anymore, so as not to arouse his longing for the girl in his heart. While Luo Qingtong was carefully observing the formation, Yu Mingxian, who was not far from her, also narrowed her eyes slightly. He couldn't delay any longer. If he slowly approached Luo Qingtong like this, he didn't know how long it would take for him to completely gain her trust. Especially after she got together with the man with the white jade mask, she treated him as nothing. If this went on, even after this trip to the abandoned continent, he couldn't ask her about the divine inscriptions. And he couldn't wait any longer. Or, it was the matter of the Central Inscription Association that made him a little impatient. Yu Mingxian's eyes were heavy. He didn't expect Luo Qingtong to be so difficult to approach. He had tried to seduce her, injure himself to gain her confidence, and even stand in front of her when she was in danger. However, she was not moved at all. If she was like this to everyone else, it would be fine. However, she treated the man with the white jade mask differently. This made Yu Mingxian feel as if she had been defeated. Why was that white jade masked man able to get close to Luo Qingtong when they both had bad intentions towards each other? Yu Mingju had been 25 years old since she was born, and she had never suffered such a setback. There was nothing he couldn't get if he wanted it. Yu Mingxian's eyes were cold. She was planning in her mind, but her face was watertight. Even though he was wearing a veiled hat and ordinary people couldn't see his face, he didn't slack off at all. In terms of scheming, he wouldn't lose to anyone. The people of the Red Flame mercenary group didn't disturb Luo Qingtong's observation. They already knew about Luo Qingtong's special ability. They knew that she liked to observe everything. Although they didn't know that it was the ability of her blood pupils, everyone knew that Luo Qingtong was very accurate in seeing things. Therefore, when she was observing things, they never disturbed her. It had become a habit. Chapter 2480. This huge teleportation formation was enough to teleport all of them to the abandoned high-level continent at once without leaving any traces behind. The Tianfeng Chu clan's people were very cautious. They wouldn't give anyone the chance to find out about their whereabouts. Luo Qingtong and the others stood in the teleportation formation. Then, under the power of the Tianfeng Chu clan's experts, they were teleported to an unfamiliar starry sky with a swoosh. There was already a group of Tianfeng Chu clan's experts waiting there. Opposite the experts from the Heavenly Wind Shu clan, there was another group of people who exuded a majestic aura. It seemed that they were the people of another aristocratic family that was competing with the Tianfeng Chu clan. Everyone on both sides was very careful and didn't want to expose their whereabouts. Their auras were restrained. Although their auras were vast and powerful, they didn't give Luo Qingtong and the others too much pressure. Otherwise, with so many experts of the human martial arts realm and even the 9th level of the human martial arts realm standing there, it was enough to suffocate warriors below the human martial arts realm and make it difficult for them to move. Of course, Luo Qingtong was fine. However, she was a warrior who hadn't even reached the venerable realm. It was too surprising that she wasn't pressured by experts above the human martial arts realm. At that time, Luo Qingtong would still have to pretend that she couldn't control herself. If she accidentally overdid it, she would be eliminated and not be allowed to enter the abandoned continent, which would be troublesome. It was good that this would happen. Luo Qingtong breathed a sigh of relief. Then, she quickly pretended to be in awe and shock. She looked at the experts of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the aristocratic family in front of her. She couldn't help it. Everyone else was like this. She couldn't be too maverick. When Chu Yufei, and the others saw the super experts of the Tianfeng Chu clan appear, a proud and complacent look flashed across their faces. Especially Chu Yufei. She secretly made up her mind that she and her mother would not be kicked out of the Tianfeng Chu clan. Otherwise, how would she be able to enjoy such glory and pride in the future? There wouldn't be a second Tianfeng Chu family that would be willing to hold a lowly girl like her in their palms and protect her like a princess. She made up her mind and the light in her eyes flowed like the venom of a poisonous snake. The disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan stepped forward and bowed to the elders. The elders of the Tianfeng Chu family also nodded at them. Then, they looked at the experts of the aristocratic families of the Feishing field on the other side. People of the Lien family of the Flying Star Planet. Now that the people of the Tianfeng Chu family are all here, how are your preparations going? Everyone is here. On the other side, the manager of the Lien clan said in a deep voice, "If your Tianfeng Chu clan has no other conditions, then let's begin." As he spoke, he gestured for the disciples of the Lien family to step forward. The group flew towards a huge abandoned continent. From afar, this abandoned high-level continent looked like a giant beast crawling in the starry sky. It was quiet and silent. Luo Qingtong felt that this abandoned continent was completely different from the barren and desolate continent from before. At least that barren and desolate continent still had some life. However, this abandoned continent was like an old man in his twilight years. It was surrounded by a dense aura of death. Chapter 2481. Even if such spiritual energy was absorbed into one's body, it would have no effect on improving one's strength. Because there was no more vitality in it. All it could do was support the use of martial techniques and cultivation methods. It could not be used to improve one's cultivation. Luo Qingtong blinked her eyes. She probably knew why this continent was called the Abandoned Continent. It seemed that it was really an abandoned continent that was no longer suitable for warriors to live in. After everyone arrived at that continent, the people of the Lien clan and the Chu clan circled around the abandoned continent. They swore that the guards of their clan's juniors weren't from their own clan, and that they wouldn't target the other clan's juniors with murderous intent. As a result, the juniors and guards of both clans began to enter the abandoned continent. Luo Qingtong followed behind the people of the Red Flame mercenary group and was sandwiched in the middle. Hu Zhan and the others were tall and strong, and they protected her very well. When she heard the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan say to begin, the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan in front of her had already begun to enter the abandoned continent. This was especially true for the top disciples who followed the elders. They were the first to fly into the palace. When Luo Qingtong followed the people of the Red Flame mercenary group and was about to enter, she suddenly heard a commotion in front of her. "Young master, it's the young master. I didn't expect the young master to come. I thought he wouldn't come." "Yes. I heard that the young master and the clan head have an agreement. If he gets the Tian Luo grass this time, the clan can't ask him how to use it. Moreover, the clan head wants to let him go. I don't know what the young master is thinking. Our Tianfeng Chu clan has such good resources and heritage, but he still wants to leave. Should I call him a country bumpkin or a country bumpkin?" The person who said this had a somewhat contemptuous look on his face, but his eyes were filled with a strong sense of jealousy that could not be dispersed. If he had such an opportunity, he would not be willing to give it up. "Isn't that so?" Many people agreed with his words. "But I heard that the young master's brain is a little short-sighted. He is not presentable at all. It's only because he is the only descendant of the clan head that he can become the young master." Someone gloated. "Sigh, it's also because the family head can't see past it. Otherwise, wouldn't Madame Xing be quite good? I think it's not a bad idea to let her be our madam. Yes, it's a pity that the patriarch isn't willing. Moreover, although young master's brain isn't very good, he's very talented. It's said that he completely inherited the clan head's bloodline talent. Not long after he returned to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he's already the number one among the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan. If it were any of you, who would have the ability and talent?" Everyone was talking at the same time. There were those who were envious, those who were jealous, and those who were full of admiration. Luo Qingtong listened with great interest. She was curious about the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. She tried her best to poke her head out of the human wall formed by Hu Zhan and the others to see what the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family looked like. However, Hu Zhan and the others were really burly and tough. Luo Qingtong finally squeezed a little through the gap between them, but she only saw a flash of white light in front of her. In an instant, she swept into the abandoned continent. Chapter 2482. This is, Luo Qingtong's eyes widened. Chu Lingfeng. She looked at Chu Lingfeng, who was riding Snowball. His entire body was tall and sturdy, and he looked extraordinarily handsome. She blinked her eyes. Damn! The young master of the Tianfeng Chu family was this big blockhead? Just as Luo Qingtong's eyes widened, Chu Lingfeng scratched his head. That's strange. Little Shui, did you sense it? Why do I feel like master is nearby? It was said that the sixth sense of a simple-minded person was the most accurate. Chu Lingfeng was like this. Even if he was far away from Luo Qingtong, and Luo Qingtong was mixed in with a group of people. She had changed her appearance and gender, making it difficult for people to recognize her. However, he still had a faint feeling in his heart. That was why he paused when he entered the abandoned continent. However, this feeling came to Chu Lingfeng from time to time. Especially when he had just arrived at the Tianfeng Chu family. Every day, he hoped that master would quickly find him and bring him back, so that his mother wouldn't be worried. Therefore, every once in a while, he would have an illusion that Luo Qingtong had come to find him. Later on, when he was disappointed many times, he learned to restrain himself. His gaze swept over the place where everyone was gathered. He patted Snowball and continued to rush into the abandoned continent. He wanted to get the Tianluo grass. When he brought it back to find his mother and master, they would definitely be very happy. Especially master. This Tianluo grass would definitely greatly improve master's strength. When master became powerful, he and his mother would have someone to rely on. They also wouldn't need to be afraid that the Tianfeng Chu family would find his mother and bully her. Chu Lingfeng's thoughts were actually very simple. When he was weak, he was saved by Luo Qingtong. Then Luo Qingtong saved Yan Nyang. In his heart, no one was more powerful than Luo Qingtong. Even if the Tianfeng Chu family praised him as a rare genius of the Tianfeng Chu family and regarded him as their young master. But in his heart, only Luo Qingtong was the most powerful. Even if the girl's strength wasn't as powerful as his, Chu Lingfeng believed that it was only temporary. No one could compare to master's strength and power. These people simply didn't know how powerful master was. This was Chu Lingfeng's thoughts. But when he was at the Tianfeng Chu family, he still didn't mention anything about Luo Qingtong. Otherwise, if people knew that the young lord of the Chu clan had a master, they would definitely go crazy. They would immediately hunt her down and deal with her. Chu Lingfeng didn't want Luo Qingtong to be in danger because of him. So he patiently stayed at the Tianfeng Chu family. First, the Tianfeng Chu family didn't let him leave. Second, he didn't want the Tianfeng Chu family to know about the existence of Luo Qingtong and Yan Nyang. Therefore, no matter what the Tianfeng Chu family asked, he didn't pay attention. He only wanted to become stronger. That's right, become stronger. During this time, Chu Lingfeng didn't do anything in the Tianfeng Chu family. He only wanted to become stronger. He didn't have many thoughts, and his brain wasn't very bright. He always remembered what Yan Nyang and Luo Qingtong had told him before. That was, if other people asked him something, he shouldn't answer. As for taking advantage, it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. Master said that he couldn't treat himself unfairly anywhere. Chapter 2483. When he becomes strong, he can go back and protect his master and mother. Chu Lingfeng really wants to become strong. When he thought about how he was powerless to face Luo Qingtong and Yan Nyang when he was unconscious, his heart ached and he couldn't forgive himself. So when he couldn't go back to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he desperately tried to improve himself. He inherited Chu Tiany's bloodline power. In the entire Chu clan, only he and Chu Tiany had this kind of ability. The Tianfeng Chu clan valued him very much. It was also because of this that he could become the young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. All of the clan's resources were at his disposal. Whatever he wanted, it was all there. Chu Lingfeng didn't hold back and used all of the Tianfeng Chu clan's resources. He even beat up the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan in order to seize their cultivation resources. In order to become strong, Chu Lingfeng didn't care about anything. What's more, he had no interest in the Tianfeng Chu clan. What did those geniuses think of him have to do with him? If he had the ability, then he would defeat him. If he couldn't defeat him, then the clan's resources would be given to him. What was there to talk about? Master said that if he could solve it with his fists, then there was no need to talk nonsense. If one fist wasn't enough, then two. What's more, the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan weren't good people either. On the surface, they accepted his identity, but behind his back, they called him a bastard. They disliked his birth and despised his mother. Chu Lingfeng once accidentally heard a group of elders talking. They said that if a woman like his mother was found, then they should just give her the position of a concubine. As for the wife of the clan head, that Madame Xing was more suitable. Pay. His mother had suffered so much for him, so how could he let his mother suffer such grievances? Not to mention a concubine, even if his mother didn't want to be the wife of the clan head, he wouldn't let her be. He also wouldn't let the Tianfeng Chu clan find her. Don't think that he didn't know that the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to use his mother to tie him down. As for the man named Shu Tianyi, his words were pleasant to hear. He said that he liked his mother and hadn't forgotten her even after so many years. But who knew if he was telling the truth? Moreover, if it wasn't for him, his mother wouldn't have suffered so much because she was pregnant with him, and his family who wouldn't have almost been ruined. Chu Lingfeng thought for a moment. His mother would definitely not want to see him. Therefore, no matter what the other party said, he was too lazy to respond, let alone reveal Yan Nyang's existence. When Chu Tianyi left the True Spill continent in the past, he hadn't specifically searched for information about the True Spill continent. Thus, he simply couldn't find the existence of the True Spill continent. Humph, once he leaves the abandoned continent, he will be able to return to find his mother and master. Chu Lingfeng rode on Snowball and disappeared into the sky above the abandoned continent. After his figure disappeared, Luo Qingtong recovered from the shock of seeing him. Damn, this news was too exciting. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan was actually Chu Lingfeng, that big fool. She was worried that he would be summoned by his father using their bloodline connection, and that he would encounter some bad treatment. Now, it seemed that he was doing very well. As Luo Qingtong thought this, she couldn't help but laugh. Yan Nyang had always been very concerned about Chu Lingfeng. Now that she had news of him, she would be able to feel at ease when she returned and told her. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. Chapter 2484. Luo Qingtong frowned. The Tianfeng Chu family attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, and they would not let him go easily. Moreover, although they attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, it was because of his talent. They would not be so tolerant to Yan Nyang. They might even use her as a tool to restrain Chu Lingfeng. This was a bit troublesome. It was not so easy for Yan Nyang to get her son back. But this could wait until later. Yan Nyang could also practice now. Once the strength of a soul-sound master was improved, ordinary masters could not compare with her. It was not certain who would look down on whom in the future. Speaking of which, Chu Lingfeng still did not know that Yan Nyang could practice. When she entered the abandoned continent and found him, she could give him a surprise. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's smile deepened. Especially when she thought of Chu Lingfeng, the silly big guy, who just scratched his head and looked around. Did that guy sense her existence, so he ran out to see her? Otherwise, how could he go in and then run out? Sure enough, silly people were particularly sensitive in other aspects. However, Snowball was her contract beast. Why didn't it move? Luo Qingtong did not sense the existence of Snowball herself. Otherwise, she would not have been so surprised when she saw Chu Lingfeng. She thought that the Tianfeng Chu family had used some means to temporarily block the connection between her and Snowball. She did not know whether it was by accident or on purpose. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Now she already had two little guys, Humph and Tuanzi. In addition, Snowball had been following Chu Lingfeng all the time. It was not impossible for it to contract with Chu Lingfeng. However, she was very unhappy with the way the Tianfeng Chu family did. Did they want to take her contract beast by force? Interesting. If they wanted to take Chu Lingfeng by force, it would be fine. But if they had other ideas, Luo Qingtong sneered. She had known for a long time that these big clans usually had a lot of dirty dealings. It had nothing to do with her in the past, and she didn't want to get involved. But if they really offended her and her people, then don't blame her for being impolite. Luo Qingtong was a person who never suffered a loss. Her mind was racing, but she didn't show it on her face. She just followed the crowd and looked ahead in surprise and excitement. He seemed to be very excited about the appearance of the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone around her had the same expression, so it didn't seem out of place. As for Yi Qianxian and the others, their eyes lit up when they saw Chu Lingfeng. Master, it's Chu Lingfeng, the big fool by the evil doctor's side. Bei Qing's voice rang out in Yi Qianxian's mind. Yes. Yi Qianxian responded in a low voice. His eyes lit up as he looked at Chu Lingfeng. Chu Lingfeng had appeared here. If that woman was also here, even if she hid her identity, she would go and meet him, right? When that time came, he would be able to find her. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian's deep black eyes revealed a hint of joy. When we arrive at the abandoned continent, find a way to find Chu Lingfeng and keep an eye on him. He gave the order. Yes. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others lowered their heads in excitement, as if they could see the hope of finding the evil doctor in the future. There was no other way. The evil doctor was too good at hiding. They had never seen such a powerful person. They had been searching for him in circles. Chapter 2485. Those noble ladies in Tiandu looked down on the evil doctors, but they didn't know that they were nothing compared to the evil doctors. They were only better than the evil doctors in terms of background and resources. What if they were in the evil doctor's position? They wouldn't even know how they died. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were excited, while Yi Qianxian subconsciously looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. He wanted to see how she would react to Chu Lingfeng's appearance. But to his disappointment, Luo Qingtong's face was filled with excitement, no different from the others. He frowned and looked at Luo Qingtong for a while, then turned his head away. Yi Qianxian didn't know why he was so obsessed. He kept thinking that Luo Qingtong was Luo Xiaoqi. He had already checked her identity, but he still didn't give up. He pressed his forehead and decided to draw a line with her after they arrived at the abandoned continent, so that he wouldn't always have these inexplicable thoughts. Anyway, Chu Lingfeng had already appeared. If Luo Qingtong wanted to take part in this operation, she would definitely show up. As for Luo Xiaoqi, she had nothing to do with him. As Yi Qianren thought of this, she closed her eyes again. The Tianfeng Chu family and the Lien family of Flying Star acted very quickly. After the top disciples rushed in, it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn. This was also to prevent anyone from attacking the top disciples of the two families. Moreover, those who entered first would have the advantage. There was no problem in arranging the order of entry according to one's identity. Okay, let's go. When it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn, he said to Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian, and the others. Follow me closely. Don't act on your own. When we get there, I'll tell you some simple information. In order to prevent any mistakes or omissions in this operation. The Tianfeng Chu family didn't mention anything about the abandoned continent. Everything was left to the people of Mercenary City to explore. Of course, the children of the Tianfeng Chu family had some information in their hands. For the sake of their own safety, they would also inform the mercenaries around them of the information that they knew. As for how much the children of the Tianfeng Chu clan knew, it depended on how high their status was. There is no doubt that some people know more and some know less. As for Chu Ku and Chu Yufei, one was from the direct line of descent, while the other was Madame Xing's daughter. Even if his current status was not as high as before, he still knew far more than Chu Xiaofeng. Especially Chu Yufei. The amount of information she knew was comparable to those top disciples. Now that Chu Ku was with her, she knew a lot of things that she didn't know before. At this moment, she sneered at Luo Qingtong and the others and said, "That's right. Just follow him obediently. Don't lose your life because of it. You must know that this high-level abandoned continent used to have extremely high energy. There are many demon beasts and spirit plants living inside. Although there are many opportunities, the danger is 10 against 10. You must be very careful." As she spoke, she snorted lightly. Her gaze swept past Yi Qianxian, then she raised her head arrogantly and said, "Of course, if you beg me, perhaps I will take you with me." Chapter 2486. To put it bluntly, Chu Ku still had her eyes on Yi Qianxian. She had her eyes on this man. She didn't know why, but she wanted this man to crawl in front of her. As long as she thought of this, her heart was very excited. The mercenaries by Chu Ku's side were all trash. They were low-level mercenary groups. Even if Yi Qianxian and the others joined her side now, it wouldn't be considered a violation of the internal rules of the Chu family. Moreover, she could casually abandon a low-level mercenary group. As for whether Chu Xiaofeng and the others wanted it or not, it was up to them. Chu Ku's eyes were burning. Chu Yufei listened to her and didn't object. Previously, she didn't want Chu Ku to be followed by Yi Qianxian. But now, she and Chu Ku walked to the side. She hoped that Yi Qianxian would come over. After all, this way, she could be with him. Compared to the arrogant and domineering Chu Ku, he would definitely think that a considerate, beautiful, and pleasant girl like her was many times better than Chu Ku. Chu Ku was a green leaf that was destined to set off the fresh flower that was her. With this thought in mind, Chu Yufei gently tugged at Chu Ku's sleeve to express her intention to persuade her. However, she didn't say anything. She only looked at Yi Qianxian and Chu Xiaofeng apologetically, as if there was nothing she could do. After hearing Chu Ku's words, Chu Xiaofeng immediately became angry. "Chu Ku, are you trying to poach people in front of me?" He laughed in anger. The information he had was indeed not as much as Chu Ku and Chu Yufei. Among them, the main variable was Chu Yufei. Her mother was Madame Xing. And Madame Xing had an extremely high status in the Tianfeng Chu family for so many years. Although she was a lowly woman brought back by the family head from a remote star region, it was said that she had saved the family head's life. For so many years, she had been respected in the Tianfeng Chu family because of her identity as his savior. And she was also very scheming. Very quickly, she gained a foothold in the Tianfeng Chu family and obtained the approval of a group of family elders. If the family head hadn't insisted, she wouldn't be Madame Xing today, but the wife of the family head. Under such circumstances, it was normal that Chu Yufei knew more about the abandoned continent than he did. After all, she was Madame Xing's only daughter. And when she was first born, she was mistaken as the daughter of the family head. It was only after a group of elders forced the patriarch to marry Madame Xing that the patriarch clarified that she was not his daughter. But even then, because the family head didn't have any children, he had always doted on her like his own daughter, chooses, SSSSS, and SSSSS family. SSSSTSS is, of a, SS if of Chu, it. SSSS, Chu Xiaofeng looked at Chu Yufei. He didn't intend to target her. Their bloodline was a firm supporter of the family head. Madame Xing had saved the family head's life, so he wouldn't target Chu Yufei. However, he wasn't so polite to Chu Ku. Chu Ku's expression froze the moment he said that. Chapter 2487. Didn't you say so yourself? These guards are all up to us to choose. Although they followed you before, if they suddenly don't want to follow you anymore and want to follow me, then you can't blame me, right? Chu Ku raised her head and responded with the words that Chu Xiaofeng used against her. Her voice was indescribably sharp. Okay. Chu Xiaofeng looked at her and smiled coldly. Which one of you wants to follow her? Quickly go over now. The information I have is indeed not as much as hers. If he was persuaded by Chu Ku, with just a few words, he didn't want such a person. If he came, he would only be a fence-sitter who would run when there was trouble. It was better to join Chu Ku, and her group as soon as possible. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, Luo Qingtong and the others didn't move at all. The people of the Red Flame mercenary group and Yi Qianxian couldn't be bothered with Chu Ku, and the others. The remaining 3 mercenary groups looked at Chu Ku, as if she was an idiot. What kind of joke was this? Because she knew more information about the abandoned continent, she wanted them to follow her? She probably didn't know Luo Xiaoqi's ability, right? When it came to information about the abandoned continent, who could compare to this young man who had meticulous observation skills? Luo Qingtong could easily analyze the environment and habits of the mission items, and even how to deal with them, and what their weaknesses and restraints were. Under such circumstances, how could an arrogant and despotic woman like Chu Ku compare to her? She even used this to tempt them. What an idiot. They wouldn't follow her unless their brains were fried. Didn't they see that the mercenary groups behind her and the girl named Xu Yufei were all ready to move? Were they waiting for them to run over so that they could fill the empty space? The group of mercenaries all looked at Chu Ku, with contempt, and no one moved. Chu Ku originally wanted Yi Qianxian and the others to come over and trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance. In the end, who would have thought that not only did Yi Qianxian and the others not come over, but even those ordinary mercenary groups didn't come over. Not only that, but they also looked at her as if she was a fool and a joke. These lowly trash. Chu Ku's face was twisted to the extreme, and her expression was unspeakably ugly. Beside her, Chu Yufei's expression was also a little ugly. After all, she was on Chu Ku's side. When the latter was humiliated, she, who had similar thoughts, also felt a little embarrassed. However, due to the fact that she was smart enough, she did not say anything the entire time. In fact, she did not even speak in support of Chu Ku. Thus, the humiliation and shock she received was not as intense as Chu Ku's. The latter was the one who had truly lost all face. Compared to being ignored at this moment, he was like a fool who was being laughed at by others. You! Chu Ku was so angry that she pointed at Luo Qingtong and the others. She was about to fly into a rage. At this moment, a dignified voice suddenly sounded from the side. What's going on? Why are you still here? This voice came from the Tianfeng Chu clan's strong cultivators. It was the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken. Everyone looked up and realized that other than them, the other disciples and guards of the Tianfeng Chu clan had all left. Grandfather. Seeing the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken, Chu Ku's mouth twitched and she almost cried. Chapter 2488. Upon hearing her voice, Luo Qingtong immediately frowned. Chu Ku's grandfather, the third elder of the third branch? Luo Qingtong frowned as she watched the other party rush over. What's going on? The third elder looked over with a dignified expression. When he saw his granddaughter's tear-stained face, he immediately frowned and looked sharply at Chu Xiaofeng. Chu Xiaofeng, did you attack Ku? His voice was filled with anger. He didn't even ask for the reason and just pinned the crime on Chu Xiaofeng. The aura around him was about to suppress Chu Xiaofeng. The other elders behind him were one step behind and could not stop him at all. If the third elder were to suppress Chu Xiaofeng with his aura, he would immediately suffer internal injuries. In this way, when Chu Xiaofeng entered the abandoned continent, it would be difficult for him to move an inch due to his internal injuries. It would be good enough if he could preserve his life there, let alone fight for the sky Luo grass. At that time, Luo Qingtong and the others would not be able to act wantonly because of him. This was definitely not the result that Luo Qingtong wanted. With that thought, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned and she suddenly pounced in Chu Xiaofeng's direction. Her movements were extremely ingenious as she avoided Chu Xiaofeng's subconscious counterattack and pushed him back a few steps to the left. The two of them coincidentally avoided the third elder's oppressive aura. Seeing this scene, Yi Qianxian's eyes suddenly narrowed. Right at this moment, the third elder's furious voice resounded. "Bastard, you!" He originally wanted to say that Luo Qingtong dared to suddenly appear and interrupt him to teach Chu Xiaofeng a lesson. But at this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly burst into tears. She really started to cry. She hugged Chu Xiaofeng's thigh and cried loudly, "Woo woo woo, I'm sorry. Young Master Xiaofeng. We didn't know what was good for us and implicated you. We will immediately switch places with the mercenaries behind Miss Ku. Let her mercenaries protect you. Third elder, please don't hit young Master Xiaofeng again." Luo Qingtong cried and said to the third elder, "It's all our fault. We were the ones who didn't know what was good for us and didn't want to exchange with Miss Ku's mercenaries. It has nothing to do with young Master Xiaofeng." Luo Qingtong's voice was extremely loud. Her cries could be said to be earth-shattering. As soon as she spoke, the gazes of the crowd all turned to Chu Ku. Or rather, he was staring behind her. He saw that there was only a group of low-level mercenaries behind Chu Ku. Looking at the group of Yi Qianxian and the others behind Chu Xiaofeng, as well as the valiant-looking members of the Red Flame mercenary group, as well as the middle-ranked mercenary groups that didn't seem weak. Everyone from the Heavenly Wind Shu clan immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that Chu Ku didn't have the ability and could only find a group of low-level mercenaries to follow her. In the end, she wasn't satisfied and set her sights on Chu Xiaofeng. She wanted him to give his mercenaries to her and exchange with her. What a joke. She didn't have the ability and actually wanted to snatch someone else's guards. Not only that, she didn't manage to snatch them and even complained to the elders. And the third elder was actually biased towards Chu Ku. It seemed that the third elder's family was indeed very indignant about losing their status as a direct descendant. Otherwise, why would the third elder lay his hands on a junior of the family? Chapter 2489. Everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family thought so and immediately looked at the third elder with different gazes. As for Chu Xiaofeng, after hearing Luo Qingtong's voice, he quickly reacted. He secretly praised this young man from the Red Flame Mercenary Corps for his cleverness. At the same time, he clenched his fists and looked at the third elder with stubbornness and determination. He said loudly, "Third elder, why did you attack me? Is it right for Chu Ku to want to snatch my mercenary? Is there such a rule in the family? If there is, please enlighten me, third elder. Otherwise, the people in the eighth elder's line will never yield." Well said. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, another dignified voice also spoke at this time. Then, with a boom, a violent and vast power pressure pressed down on the third elder. In an instant, he was forced to take 2 steps back and his face flushed red. It was obvious that he had just suffered a great blow. Granduncle. Chu Xiaofeng looked at the old man who appeared in front of him with a surprised and excited expression. The old man raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. He praised, "You're very good. You didn't embarrass the eighth elder's line." At this point, he suddenly raised his hand and a strong wind blasted in Chu Ku's direction. With a smack, Chu Ku's face was slapped hard. In an instant, she was sent flying by the slap. "Humph. You're not strong enough and have no one to follow you. Instead of reflecting on yourself, you actually want to snatch the mercenary of your own family? How shameless of you. The people in the third elder's line don't teach their disciples well. The people in the eighth elder's line will teach them a lesson for you." The eighth elder's expression was sullen. The scene of the third elder attacking Chu Xiaofeng just now really angered him. If the fault was on the eighth elder's line, then so be it. However, it was clearly Chu Ku, who was rude and unreasonable and wanted to snatch the mercenary of their line's younger generation. The third elder did not distinguish between right and wrong and actually wanted to attack a younger generation. How could he tolerate such humiliation? The other party was so shameless, so why should he care about his status? This palm wind did not seriously injure Chu Ku, which was already the last bit of face he left for the family. He did not want to make things too ugly outside and become a joke to the Lien family of the Flying Star. But today's matter, he would never let the third elder and his people off. The eighth elder's words were aggressive, and the third elder's face was extremely ugly. He did not expect things to turn out like this. Chu Ku had actually complained to him because she had failed to snatch Chu Xiaofeng's mercenaries. Bastard, that vile spawn. How dare he? Chu Xiaofeng's line, he subconsciously, Xiaofeng's choose Chu Xiaofeng. And subconsciously, he thought for Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng elder, Chu Xiaofeng's line. That vile spawn had made him lose face. Faced with the eighth elder's scolding and the various gazes of the Tianfeng Chu family, the third elder's face suddenly turned purple. He wished he could give Chu Ku another slap and kill her. That would be better than making a fool of himself. Just as he was glaring fiercely at Chu Ku, Chu Yufei finally came to her senses from the turn of events. Chapter 2490. No, third elder, it's not like that. In her panic, she couldn't explain the situation clearly. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's pitiful voice sounded again. That's right, it's all our fault. Miss Yufei, don't say any more. I know that we didn't know what was good for us. Miss Ku wanted us to go over to her side, so we should have gone over. She sniffed and continued, it's us who didn't know what was good for us. Miss Ku clearly said that her bloodline would inherit the Chu family sooner or later. We didn't want to break our promise to young Master Xiaofeng, so we didn't go over. If we knew this would happen, we would have gone over directly. It's our fault. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. The moment Luo Qingtong's words came out, there was a moment of silence. The veins on third elder's face almost popped out. Scoundrel, you're talking nonsense. Ku would never say that. Third elder said, but there was some uncertainty on his face. Because he knew his granddaughter's temperament too well. She was arrogant and despotic, and always talked about her identity as a direct descendant. If she had been provoked by Chu Xiaofeng in a fit of anger because she had failed to get the mercenaries, she would have scolded him without thinking. He would still believe her. Evil creature. Evil creature. If he had known that this evil creature was so capable, he would have broken her legs at home. He would have made it impossible for her to participate in this operation. Third elder's expression was malevolent, and he was extremely regretful. When Luo Qingtong heard his words, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned pale in an instant. She nodded forcefully, and shrank back as she said, yes, I didn't. Miss Ku didn't say. I probably heard wrongly. Heard wrongly? How could he have misheard such a thing? Moreover, even if he had heard wrongly, Chu must have heard wrongly. This also meant that Chu Ku should have said something similar. Otherwise, how could this young man say such things? The people from the Tianfeng Chu clan glanced at Luo Qingtong's figure. After seeing her strength, they were even more certain of her words. After all, they didn't believe that a low-level mercenary like Luo Qingtong would dare to frame a descendant of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone looked at the third elder with even more profound expressions. After the eighth elder heard Luo Qingtong's words, he suddenly sneered, waved his sleeve and said, so that's how it is. I was wondering why the younger generation of the third elder was so bold. It turns out that they have a backer. Third elder, should I congratulate you in advance for taking over the Chu clan in the future? The moment the eighth elder's words left his mouth, the third elder's face turned ashen. His lips twitched, and then he roared angrily, "This is all slander. Chu Tongming, this is definitely a scheme of the eighth elder's faction. We, the third elder's faction, will never admit it. I will not let this matter rest." With that, he waved his sleeve and ran away. He looked like he was about to flee. He couldn't stay here any longer. After the third elder left, Chu Yufei covered her mouth and cried out in shock. She only realized now that she had casually defended Chu Ku, and caused a lot of trouble. Who would have thought that the young man from the Red Flame mercenary group would pin such a huge accusation on the third elder's faction? Chapter 2491. Moreover, she didn't know what to say. Luo Qingtong's last sentence, she didn't say anything. She must have heard wrongly. He had cut off all her avenues of defense. Even if she stood up to prove that Chu Ku, didn't say that, no one would believe her. Not to mention clearing Chu Ku's name of not snatching. Because no matter what she said, even Luo Qingtong would agree with her in the end and admit that Chu Ku, didn't snatch Chu Ku. The people from the Tianfeng Chu family wouldn't believe it either. They would only think that Luo Qingtong denied it against her will because of the strength and power of Chu Ku, and the third elder's faction. Oh my God. This young man. Chu Yufei looked in disbelief at the young man who was walking towards the Red Flame mercenary group with his head lowered. When the latter walked in front of the Red Flame mercenary group, the mercenaries of the Red Flame mercenary group even raised their hands to pat his head. He raised his head and smiled. His smile was full of sunshine. This young man was too scary. When Chu Yufei looked at Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian was also staring at Luo Qingtong. When the latter rushed out to push Chu Xiaofeng away, he almost pulled her back. They were too similar. Whether it was the trick or the vengeful personality. Even the action of rushing to Chu Xiaofeng and pushing him away gave him the same feeling as Luo Qingtong. She just avoided the third elder's aura. Was it a coincidence or, Yi Qianxian's eyes were fixed on Luo Qingtong. The latter felt his burning gaze and raised her head to see that his eyes were fixed on her body. She felt a burst of bafflement in her heart. What was wrong with this person? Did she show anything just now? Luo Qingtong carefully recalled her actions and words just now and realized that there was nothing wrong with them. The third elder had obviously attacked Chu Xiaofeng indiscriminately at that time. So, it was impossible to reason with him at that time. If he were to make a move on Chu Xiaofeng, even if the situation was explained later, he would not admit to it. The biggest possibility was that they would push the blame onto the mercenaries, saying that they had instigated Chu Xiaofeng to turn their clansmen against each other. Under such circumstances, and with Chu Ku, adding fuel to the fire, it was very likely that all of them would be in trouble. Luo Qingtong felt that there was nothing wrong with what she had done. Moreover, he did not reveal his strength or ability. Why was this person staring at her? Could it be that he saw something? Luo Qingtong's eyes were alert. She instantly raised her guard against Yi Qianxian. She hadn't forgotten that the other party had come for her identity as Luo Qingtong. If the other party really found clues about her relationship with Luo Qingtong, it would be very disadvantageous for her and the true Spill continent. Luo Qingtong's thoughts turned. She did not avoid Yi Qianxian's gaze. Instead, she walked towards him. How is it? Brother, aren't I very powerful? Shouldn't you thank me? She smiled as she approached Yi Qianxian and whispered. At the same time, she raised her hand and slapped towards Yi Qianxian's arm. There was no other way. She couldn't reach his shoulder, but his waist, the other party did not allow her to slap him. His arm should be fine now, right? Luo Qingtong's movements were very bold. Chapter 2492. Thank you for what? His voice was cold. Even though he was wearing a mask and his voice was obstructed, she could still hear the bone-chilling coldness in his voice. He had never been stingy with his gentleness to anyone other than Luo Qingtong. In other words, no one other than Luo Qingtong could enjoy his gentleness. "Thank you for solving a big problem for you," Luo Qingtong said with a smile. She approached him and pulled his sleeve tightly. She looked as if she was afraid that someone would hear her. She whispered in his ear, "If I hadn't solved the big problem of Chu Ku for you, you might have been ordered to follow Chu Ku by that old man, third elder. After all, her side is so pitiful. She only has a few low-level mercenary corps with her. How could third elder bear to do that? She must think that our young master Xiao Feng bullied her. Then she will cry and ask you to go over. Ah, then you will be in trouble." Luo Qingtong sighed and shook her head as she spoke. "Is that so?" Yi Qianxian listened to her excellent performance and felt that even her ability to lie through her teeth was exactly the same as that woman. Thinking of this, he was about to raise his hand and push Luo Qingtong away because she was too close to him. Then he looked at her coldly and said, "Didn't you say that she wanted us to go over together? Why am I the only one now?" He reminded her of what she said before. It was not for him alone. I was just saying that on purpose to fool the Heavenly Wind Shu clan." Luo Qingtong's eyes darted around. She admitted without hesitation that she had been fooling around. "You see, that woman Chu Ku's eyes never left you. Even a blind person would know that she was coveting you. In short, I saved your beauty. Ahem, no, your chastity. Ahem, that's still not right. In short, I saved you from the abyss of suffering. So, brother, let's sever our previous apology. No, we're even, right?" As Luo Qingtong spoke, Yi Qianxian's expression darkened. And it was getting darker and darker. He looked at the young man whose words were as irritating as the woman's, and his thin lips curved into a cold arc under the mask. Beauty, chastity. Cut him in half. Yi Qianxian was so angry that he laughed. "So, you came here just to tell me this? Even?" "Yeah." Luo Qingtong nodded without hesitation. Nonsense, if it wasn't for this, why did she suddenly run over to talk to him? Of course, it was also to dispel his suspicions. After all, he had already looked at her with such a gaze, but she didn't avoid it. Instead, she purposely moved closer to him. She had a clear conscience, right? On the other hand, she really didn't know how to sew. Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian and suggested seriously, "Look, brother, you're not at a disadvantage. A piece of clothing in exchange for your chastity. You've made a huge profit, you know. Look at your handsome body. If you really end up in Chu Ku's hands, you'll be eaten clean. So, hurry up and wash it. Do you agree?" However, just as Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian, the man's cold voice suddenly rang out. "I don't agree." As soon as Yi Qianxian spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice instantly stopped. Chapter 2493. You don't agree? Are your clothes more important than your chastity? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The other party's answer was completely out of her expectations. This man just wanted to go against her, didn't he? Luo Qingtong deeply suspected that the other party was doing this on purpose. What the hell, wasn't he unwilling to have anything to do with her before? Why was he like a piece of sticky candy that she couldn't get rid of? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The latter was delighted to see her bristling like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Even when Luo Qingtong repeatedly mentioned the taboo of his chastity and beauty, he didn't care so much. The haze and coldness in his eyes dissipated a lot. Just sew your clothes properly. Of course, you can choose another path and overturn what you just said to the Tianfeng Chu family. However, even if you can do it, when I go over to Chu Ku's place, I will ask her to bring you along. As soon as Yi Qianxian said this, Luo Qingtong instantly fell silent. MMPE. You win. Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart and then left gloomily. Looking at her back as she left, the corners of Yi Qianxian's lips curled up slightly, but then he quickly suppressed it. What was going on? Facing the other party, he became more and more happy. He had clearly decided to draw a line with the other party, but when he heard that she wanted to cut ties with him, an inexplicable anger rushed up in his heart and he rejected her without hesitation. Was it because the other party was too similar to Luo Qingtong? So he couldn't accept the other party drawing a line with him? Yi Qianxian frowned and stared at Luo Qingtong with gloomy eyes. As soon as Luo Qingtong turned around, she felt Yi Qianxian's gaze on her. She cursed in her heart. Was this person done yet? Was this not enough to dispel his suspicions? Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart, and then returned to the Red Flame mercenary group. When the latter and the others saw her return with a gloomy face, they couldn't help but laugh. Gui Feng rubbed her head and chuckled. What's wrong? Little Seven came back after being defeated? Did you fail to ask for a favor and get rejected? As soon as he said that, the crowd laughed even louder. Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth as she looked at her teammates who were kicking her when she was down. What sin had she committed to meet such a group of people? Not only did he not seek justice for her, he even mocked her. Luo Qingtong forgot that this was entirely her own fault. Who told her to go against Yi Qianming? Just as she was looking at the Red Flame mercenary group angrily, Chu Xiaofeng returned from the Tianfeng Chu family's team. He had just been called over to ask questions. Although the Tianfeng Chu family believed Luo Qingtong's words, they still had to ask more questions. The ambition of the third elder's family was destroyed. This was not a trivial matter. The Tianfeng Chu family would definitely investigate it carefully. Not to mention others, the eighth elder's family would never let go of this good opportunity. Speaking of which, Luo Qingtong had helped them a lot. Therefore, Chu Xiaofeng was looking at Luo Qingtong with joy in his eyes. Haha. Not bad. You're really something. As he spoke, he threw a punch at Luo Qingtong with a smile on his face. You're called Luo Shaoqi, right? Well done. When we get to the abandoned continent, I'll protect you. His fist was aimed at Luo Qingtong's chest. It was originally an action between men to express their feelings and gratitude, but Luo Qingtong's face turned green. Damn it, you could have hit anywhere, but you just had to hit my chest. She stared at Chu Xiaofeng's fist. She really couldn't dodge or block it. Chapter 2494. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed over from the side. Luo Qingtong sensed the appearance of this gust of wind. She didn't resist and allowed this gust of wind to push her body back. In this way, her body just missed Chu Xiaofeng's punch. The latter's fist directly hit the air in front of her. Huh! Chu Xiaofeng was stunned. Although the punch he just threw didn't carry any power, it was just a simple punch. But with Luo Qingtong's strength, she shouldn't have been able to dodge it. He was puzzled in his heart, but his attention was quickly attracted by Yi Qianxian and the others who were walking over. We should go. The others have been in the abandoned continent for a long time. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. The pair of eyes hidden behind the mask didn't even look at Luo Qingtong. If Luo Qingtong didn't feel that the gust of wind was indeed coming from his direction, she wouldn't have been able to tell that it was him. Why did this man suddenly help her? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Thinking of Yi Qianxian suspecting that she was Luo Qingtong, she immediately frowned. Could it be because of this that he deliberately took action? He even suspected that she was Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, she didn't act rashly. But then again, he had clearly patted her chest and touched her Adam's apple. She was completely in the appearance of a man. Why was he still so stubborn? Luo Qingtong was also speechless. If it weren't for the fact that she really didn't have something growing down there, Luo Qingtong would have taken off her pants and shown it to him. Did he have to be so persistent? There's something wrong with your brain. Big brother. Luo Qingtong was speechless at Yi Qianxian's stubborn attitude of suspicion. If it were someone else, they would have long been dispelled by her several methods. This person was so difficult to deal with. Really troublesome. Fortunately, her small illusion pill had almost no flaws, so she wasn't afraid of him checking. Unless he took off her pants. But the other party didn't look like someone who would do such a thing. Luo Qingtong's gaze lightly glanced at Yi Qianxian's cold and heavy aura. She wasn't worried. What's more, even if the other party really took off her pants, she could think of a way to deal with it. It was just a little troublesome, and there was no guarantee that she wouldn't be exposed. Let's see who could outplay who. With this thought, Luo Qingtong relaxed a little. As for Chu Xiaofeng, when he heard Yi Qianren's words, he had already forgotten that Luo Qingtong had just dodged his punch. Yi Qianya's words reminded him that he was already far behind the others. Although he had gained the recognition of the clan and even obtained the opportunity to deal with the Third Elder's faction, it was not worth it to fall behind. Of Luofeng of Luofeng of Luofeng of Luofeng of Luofeng's S. Of Luf Luofeng Eng, Luf Luofeng of Luo. Of Luofeng is of Luofeng. If he could stand out from the other disciples, it would be of great benefit to him. What's more, there were many heaven and earth treasures in the abandoned continent. Because the Tian Luo grass had been bred, the other heaven and earth treasures had also benefited from it. The spiritual flowers and herbs that should have withered and died out long ago were all nourished by the power of the great Tao and glowed with a different kind of vitality and vigor. Under such circumstances, they were completely different from the spiritual flowers and herbs that grew elsewhere. Whether it was in terms of effect or level, they were much higher. Chu Xiaofeng naturally wanted to take more back. After all, there was only one Tian Luo grass, and it wasn't easy to get. Chapter 2495. Let's go. He said to Luo Qingtong and the others and led them to the abandoned continent. At this moment, among the groups from the Heavenly Wind Chu family and the Lian family, only Chu Ku's group and their group had not entered the abandoned continent. After they left, Chu Ku and Chu Yufei also walked out of the Tianfeng Chu clan's team. Chu Ku's face was covered in tears and there was a big palm print on her face. The eighth elder did not use too much strength in that slap. But even so, Chu Ku fainted from the slap. Half of her face was swollen like a steamed bun. It would take at least 180 days for the swelling to subside. And this was the result of the eighth elder deliberately showing mercy. Otherwise, Chu Ku would have died under his palm. At this moment, she was crying bitterly. No matter how she tried to explain, the Tianfeng Chu clan's people did not listen. They even looked at her as if she was an unteachable child and drove her out like she was trash. Chu Ku's heart was filled with indescribable hatred. *tch, that Luo Shaoqi, I will not let her go. Chu Ku did not expect that she just wanted to trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance, but in the end, she caused such a big trouble. God knew that when she woke up and learned what had happened to her clan, she almost went crazy. She had never said anything that would harm her bloodline, but everyone felt that she had said it. Chu Xiaofeng's testimony made her unable to defend herself. And all of this was because of Luo Shaoqi. If it were not for her, she would not have become like this. And now, the unlucky one should be Chu Xiaofeng. After learning about what had happened from Chu Yufei, she hated Luo Qingtong to the core. Luo Shaoqi, just you wait. She would definitely die a horrible death. Chu Ku's face was gloomy. She would be despised by the entire Third Elder's clan. If she continued to stay in the Tianfeng Chu clan's team, she might be beaten to death by the Third Elder who rushed back in exasperation. Under such circumstances, not to mention being injured, even if she was seriously injured, she would crawl to the abandoned continent. That was her only chance to turn things around. If she could stand out among the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan, not only would she be able to obtain the Tian Luo grass, but she would also be able to obtain countless other treasures. This would greatly improve her status in the Tianfeng Chu clan in the future. Otherwise, she would really be finished. The more Chu Ku thought about it, the more resentful she felt. She firmly disagreed with Chu Yufei's persuasion to stay with the Tianfeng Chu family to recuperate. Sister Yufei, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I can't stay in Tianfeng Chu's house. Otherwise, I'll be beaten to death by my father. Chu Ku looked at Chu Yufei and said firmly while crying. Chu Yufei was also in a bad mood. She didn't want to travel with Chu Ku at all. Previously, it was because Chu Ku's identity was useful to her. Now, Chu Ku was already someone that everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to beat up. How would it help her? Not only that, but she was also a big burden. When she thought of the mercenaries that Chu Ku had recruited and how they were all repulsive and low-level mercenaries, she felt very angry. She actually had to bring such a burden with her. How could she be happy about this? However, even if she was unhappy, she could only bring her along. Chapter 2496. Chu Yufei was depressed in her heart, but on the surface, she forced a smile and said to her, "All right, as you wish." As she spoke, her fingers clenched tightly. At this time, Luo Qingtong and the others had already landed on the abandoned continent. This was the first time that Luo Qingtong had come to another continent. The previous Heavenly Wind Inscription City and Mercenary City, although large and located in the Heavenly Wind domain. But they were special existences in the Heavenly Wind domain. They were only cities in the sky, not continents. This abandoned continent was another foreign continent that Luo Qingtong had truly set foot on after leaving the true Spill continent. The spiritual energy here was just like what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. Although it was abundant, it was full of a decaying aura. It was even more serious than what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. It was completely impossible to absorb. This spiritual energy formed a miasma-like existence in the air. It was as black as a thick fog. If this spiritual energy was absorbed into the body, not only would it not enhance one's strength, but it would also block their meridians, making it impossible for them to display their strength normally. If they absorbed too much of it, it would completely block their meridians, making them a cripple, unable to display any strength. This meant that the people who entered this abandoned continent could no longer use the spiritual qi to replenish their strength. But the strength in their body would eventually be exhausted one day. Under such circumstances, how could they replenish their strength? Could it be that they would have to fight hand to hand? Wasn't that too ridiculous? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. The others also showed a look of surprise. On the contrary, Chu Xiaofeng's face didn't show much surprise. Obviously, he had already expected such a situation. This abandoned continent has been abandoned for a long time. The spiritual energy here can no longer be used. But the spiritual herbs here can be used. I don't know why, but the heart of this dead continent suddenly condensed heavenly net grass. Under such circumstances, the spiritual herbs and precious herbs here have all recovered. The power of the qi of the Great Way contained in them is enough for us to replenish our strength. However, those spiritual herbs and precious herbs are extremely hard to come by. The places where they are located are all guarded by magical beasts and demonic plants that have been contaminated by the waste spiritual qi. All of you have to be careful and don't recklessly use the power within your body. Once the energy in one's body is exhausted, one will be no different from a cripple in this abandoned continent. Chu Xiaofeng instructed everyone. Yes. Everyone acknowledged in a deep voice. At this time, Luo Qingtong saw a group of mercenaries waiting in front. Or rather, they were the representatives of the mercenary groups that came in before them. When the mercenaries saw Luo Qingtong and the others land on the ground, they immediately surrounded them with smiles. Little 7. Seventh young master. Everyone had flattering smiles on their faces as they tried to curry favor with him. After the mercenaries came to this abandoned continent, they realized that they were right to insist on calling Luo Qingtong along. Damn it, almost all the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent couldn't be used. They could only rely on their own strength and the spiritual herbs and precious herbs in this abandoned continent to replenish their strength. All the spiritual herbs and precious herbs that they brought were all corroded by the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent. In the end, they were completely rotten and could no longer be used. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.